across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We've just seen a big, important press conference at Chequers between the President of the United States and our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Fascinating insights there into the two men's relationship and what their policies are on things like immigration, the Israel-Palestine issue, and of course the fact that Charlie Kirk has the controversy over that has led to the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel's show in America. That's something a lot of our viewers and listeners of course have a view on. We'll talk about all of that today. We'll dissect that press conference. We've got Ryan Sabey from The Sun standing by. His boss Jack Elsom was there. We'll hopefully speak to Jack at some point. We'll also talk about the fact that Trump said the second state visit is one of the highest honours of my life, and I think, relatively speaking, Keir Starmer got through that press conference without too much egg on his face. We'll talk to Ryan in depth. We'll talk to Michael Yaki, the US political analyst. We'll also talk about the economic element of all of this, the tech investment. Is this going to bring jobs to this country? Is it worth it? Of course, there were people sniping and saying, oh, 15 million quid for this visit. Well, if there's actually billions of investment at the end of it, is that all right too? We'll talk about immigration and the 5,500 in, one out deal, as it should be called. Since they announced the so-called one in, one out deal, it's not that at all. 5,500 people have come over in small boats. One of them has been sent to France, but he's got to be sent to India anyway. So France have net zero and we have an extra migrant. That is what has happened so far. We'll probe all of that. Sir Iain Duncan Smith will speak to us a little bit later on. Also, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who says migrants who fight deportation make a mockery of our laws. Let me tell you something. As someone who worked at the Home Office as a special advisor, it's been going on for years. What happens is they get to the steps of the plane and they say, oh, by the way, I was trafficked as a modern slave. And that means a whole raft of things then have to happen. We'll talk to Wallace Simons about Israel-Palestine, about the Trump press conference and what has happened there. That's something that America and the UK disagree with. We'll get the sport. We'll, of course, talk about what is coming up in The Sun tomorrow as well. Loads to discuss, and I want to make sure that you get your voice on the air here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. We'll play out as many of those as we can. Less than a minute, please, to 0344 499 1000. You can ring me on that number. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on that number as well. Lots to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, a fascinating press conference there. We heard so much from President Trump and indeed Prime Minister Starmer. There wasn't too much consternation. As I was saying to Ian Collins a few minutes ago, I found it really, really interesting actually that they managed to get through it without disagreeing too much, including on a big issue that they disagree with in terms of recognition of a Palestinian state. Even Peter Mandelson was clearly a very, very big issue for Keir Starmer. Interestingly, Donald Trump said he didn't really know him, which I'm sure Peter Mandelson will have hated. As the US ambassador, he was the person who was meant to grease the wheels and have an incredible beeline into the Trump White House and do all those trade deals. Well, actually, there was Donald Trump, in the view of the world's media, actually distancing himself from Keir Starmer, distancing himself from Peter Mandelson, certainly not Keir Starmer. It was really interesting to see how, certainly with the royals yesterday, that President Trump was clearly awestruck by the ceremony, loved what was going on. He talked about Chequers being a wonderful place. He talked about Windsor Castle being such a special place and the better of even of the royal residences that he had been to in terms of Buckingham Palace. So I'm really interested what you thought. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. The Prime Minister, of course, being very clear in regard to Hamas being a terrorist organisation. Donald Trump saying he had seen a lot of the footage of the 7th of October attacks and actually challenging Robert Peston from ITV, saying, you remember the 7th of October, don't you? Very interesting one there. And certainly in immigration as well, Jack Elsom, who we're going to speak to in just a second, he's the political editor of The Sun. He's at Chequers at the moment, was in that press conference and asked a question about immigration. We're getting all those clips turned round at the moment, and we'll play you some of those clips later on if you're just joining us and you missed the press conference. It went on for the guts of an hour, really, in terms of what was said, and we'll talk through that with them in a moment. The big one, of course, on Russia, on Ukraine, Trump saying Putin has let me down. That is something that he thought he talked about 7 conflicts that he had brought a solution to, in his view anyway. Certainly in regard to what was said at the press conference, he said Putin had let him down. He met him in Alaska. He said it wasn't necessarily a mistake to meet him in Alaska, but that Putin had let him down. That is very, very strong phrase, certainly from Donald Trump. Interestingly, on Jimmy Kimmel as well, this is the host, the American late-night comedy host, who criticised Charlie Kirk and said that he was criticised certainly those who were trying to talk about the person who apparently killed Tyler Robinson, his name is, the 22-year-old. Well, that was something that came up at the press conference as well. Well, Jack Elsom is on the phone right now. He was at the press conference and is the Sun's political editor, no stranger to this programme. Jack, tell us what you thought.
Afternoon, Peter. Sorry, I'm just moving out of the way of some bagpipes, which have just struck up as the president and Keir Starmer leaves. So I'm moving around a bit, trying to stay within Wi-Fi.
Maybe you could organise the Reform UK tannoy to go off as well. Tell us about.
Yeah, we don't seem to have much luck, do we? Every time that we end up speaking, there seems to be some sort of din in the background. Although I have to say the bagpipes are much nicer. Oh, they just stopped. There we go.
Good.
Mr. President must have left the building. So we've just come from the press conference between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. Lots of stuff to unpack there. I asked him 2 questions. One, what advice would you give to our Prime Minister about stopping the illegal migration crisis? The president, obviously, in his 9 months, been pretty successful in all but eliminating southern border crossings. And he said, do whatever it takes, because illegal migration, in his words, can destroy countries. He talked about sending in the military, which I don't think he's ever said before in terms of how Britain should tackle this. And, at the moment, where Keir Starmer is under so much pressure to end the Channel crisis, that is what a lot of people in Britain, I think, would resonate with. Keir Starmer came back and said that he wants to crack on with, getting this one in, one out returns deal continuing, wants to ramp that up at scale, trumpeted the fact that the first migrant was returned across the Channel today. But I think that when most voters are looking on at that press conference and they see one man who is saying stuff like, send in the military, do whatever it takes, illegal migration can destroy countries, that is much more of a sign of intent and a sign of toughness than what we were hearing from our own Prime Minister. And then obviously he was asked a whole host of questions on net zero, obviously differences between the two men. Keir Starmer was saying that he wants a mix of oil and gas and renewables, whereas Donald Trump was saying, drill, baby, drill. And I really hope that the Prime Minister continues to drill in the North Sea. Obviously, Ed Miliband, as Energy Secretary, has said that he will ban all new oil and gas licenses in the North Sea. And then we did see, there was lots of bonhomie. They seemed to be getting on fine, some backslapping. The president made a point of saying that Keir Starmer is doing a good job as Prime Minister, but clearly divisions also on Palestine.
Well, that's an interesting point. Let's actually just
carry on.
Let's just have a look at that clip, actually, about them talking together, about working together to end the humanitarian crisis, but nonetheless disagreeing on the recognition of Palestine. Let's just have a look at what happened.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East, get the aid in, free the hostages, and ultimately bring Israel and the region back towards a comprehensive plan which can deliver peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike.
I thought it was very interesting that your colleague, political editor of ITV News, Robert Peston, Jack, was sort of challenged a little bit by Donald Trump, certainly in regard to the 7th of October. And clearly 147 countries actually recognise a Palestinian state. I suppose, will it make that much difference when the UK actually does? It's symbolic. It's important, of course, for many of Keir Starmer's backbenchers. But it wasn't something, to me anyway, sitting here in London, that the two men seem to very much fall out or strongly disagree about, or want to show their disagreement about at that press conference. What was your impression?
Yeah, you're right. I think Donald Trump clearly disagrees with it, but he didn't want to actually lay into Keir Starmer in full public glare. The two men do clearly have a good relationship, and thorny topics there may be, but it doesn't seem to really have caused any tantrums on either side for the time being. He got quite a hostile question, Keir Starmer, from Fox's Pete Ducey, who asked him about why he's made the decision to recognise the Palestinian state after Donald Trump leaves town. He suggested that the president might be unhappy with this. And, Keir Starmer, to his credit, I think, actually did say that this has been a long time coming. He said that he would take this decision to recognise the Palestinian state at the United Nations Leaders Summit, which is coming up the end of next week. And so, this was a long time coming, this decision. However, clearly there's a big difference between the two of them. And Donald Trump actually, at the press conference, said, I don't disagree with your prime minister on many things, but this is clearly one of them. So, yeah, there is a bit of a split here, although I would point out that it does seem that Donald Trump with this one is at odds with a lot of new Western countries, which are now recognising the Palestinian state. But like you said, Peter, Keir Starmer is under massive pressure from his own party to do something on this one. And it does seem, and it was put to him here, that it is more of a political gesture than actually anything concrete.
Speaking of concrete things, words really matter in regard to Putin and Ukraine. We're just going to watch another clip now of what Trump said on Putin. This was perhaps, to me, I wonder what you think, Jack, and we'll get your reaction in a second, but I thought this was perhaps the most significant thing he said in the press conference. Let's hear what Donald Trump said about Vladimir Putin.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. But that turned out to be, I thought it might be among the easiest of the group.
I mean, those are strong words from Donald Trump there. They weren't said in a particularly powerful way. They were said in a quite sort of breezy style that he has. But nonetheless, diplomatically, they're very, very strong words, are they not, Jack?
Yes, very significant in the lifetime of this Ukrainian war, because your viewers will remember a few months ago when we had that incredible high-stakes summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska. From there, we were told that Putin and Zelensky would be the next to hold a summit, and then we would have a third summit between Donald Trump, Putin and Zelensky to end this war. However, it now seems that Donald Trump seems to be losing hope of getting that across the line anytime soon. Clearly, incredibly frustrated with Putin's actions since then. Putin, I think, to try and strengthen his hand in negotiations, has actually worsened the attacks on Ukraine to really sort of put his boot down, but it hasn't impressed the US president at all, who at the moment is now talking about fresh sanctions on the Russian state as a consequence of that.
Jack, I just want to ask you about one other thing before you go. I'm sure you're eager to get typing for the Sun tomorrow and back to London as well. This is Trump talking about Charlie Kirk and actually what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, the late night host who's now had a show cancelled, and instead there's going to be a tribute to Charlie Kirk shown in the same time slot on ABC. Let's see what the president said about that at the press conference a few minutes ago.
He was a great young man. Incredible future. Some people said he might be president someday. I told him, I said, Charlie, I think you have a good shot someday at being president. And he just wanted to take care of youth.
So in that particular discussion, certainly that's something I would imagine the American journalists have been talking about a bit more, but of course it's had an impact over here as well, especially in regard to what particularly J.D. Vance, the Vice President, has been consistently saying about free speech. I wonder whether Charlie Kirk, with his commitment to free speech, would have actually wanted Jimmy Kimmel's show to be cancelled, but the President taking no prisoners there, saying very straightforwardly, Jimmy Kimmel got cancelled because of a lack of talent.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit of a delicate one for both Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. I think Keir Starmer handled it pretty delicately, obviously rightly condemning the political assassination of Charlie Kirk for free speech, and he was very much wanting to express his condolences. He revealed that he had texted Donald Trump in the immediate aftermath to express his condolences for that. Obviously, free speech is becoming more of a talking point in Britain. Lots of people seeming to be arrested for stuff on social media. Keir Starmer made the point in saying that he wants free speech in this country. We've had it for a very long time. So I think that's Marine One just landing, coming into land over there. So the president's about to take off, and it's very, very loud.
Can you show us, Jack? Can you point the camera in that direction?
Yeah, one sec. Let me have a look. How do I do this? You see that, Marine One coming in?
Oh, there we go. There's Marine One. There we can see that the wall of checkers there. So that's coming in to collect the president. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the wall of checkers there. So they're flying into the lawn at checkers now. where they're going to pick up the president and the rest of them. So
and
yeah,
then
it's very loud
he goes to I think it's Stansted, where he goes on Air Force One and back to America. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's out of town. He's, I think, attending Charlie Kirk's funeral either tomorrow or over the weekend. And so he's got a packed schedule. But, going back onto the Charlie Kirk issue, clearly handled very delicately by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was eager, I think, to stress the importance of his Online Safety Act, where there's been lots of contention here in Britain. He is saying that he wants to safeguard free speech. We've had it for a very long time, and it's the bedrock of our democracy, but also saying that does not extend to free speech for paedophiles and haters online. And so it's a very tight balancing act, which the Keir Starmer, I think, probably handled pretty well.
And just finally, Jack,
there's another one. I think Marine 2 is also coming into land, so that's also disrupting our broadcast right now.
My goodness, we never get through an interview without something loud happening, Jack, or even beyond us two. Just finally, before you go, tell me about the fact that the President was asked, and indeed the Prime Minister was asked, whether this is still a Christian country. I know many of our viewers and listeners have a strong Christian faith. What did you make of the answers to that question?
Yeah, obviously, the evangelical right is a massive base and caucus in America, and the Republican Party especially. We don't really have the same kind of fusion of religion and politics in Britain as we do in America. Alistair Campbell very famously said, we don't do God. It was interesting, though, because he was asked about this by one of the travelling American pack, who is British, working for a rival TV station, saying that, do you sense that we are still a Christian country? And he said, yes. He said that the Christian church is still his church. I thought he was an atheist from what I've read before, but maybe he was Christian, but now no longer believes in it. But yeah, no, it was an interesting talking point. It's now getting very, very loud here because two choppers are now coming into land.
Is this the chopper that's come to pick you up, Jack, and to bring you back to Sun headquarters in London? Is that the US Marines in to pick you up?
Peter, I'm going to have to turn you up. I really can't hear you.
Okay, no worries. That is Jack Elsom there, who did his valiant best. The second time in the last few days, I interviewed him at Reform UK conference. You may remember that interview a few days ago, and it was just so incredibly loud. There was a very loud sort of public address system behind us, but Ryan giving us great analysis there. What's your analysis? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. As always, I'll get as many people on the air between now and 7 o'clock. It's always the way any programme I present. It's about the guests, it's about people like Jack, but it's about your thoughts as well. Jill is our first caller of Talk Drive today. Jill in Cornwall. Jill, how are you doing? What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. I'm fine, thank you. I watched the interview and everything, and I think Keir Starmer got off comparatively lightly.
I agree with you, Jill.
To be perfectly honest. I agree with what Donald Trump said about sending in the military to sort some of the illegal migrants out. I don't know why we aren't doing that already. Maybe we just haven't got enough military to do it. And I don't know why we're in a situation where now when you think of lifeboats, you think of them picking up the illegal immigrants and bringing them in.
Yeah.
And this one in, one out thing, I'm sorry, I think it's laughable.
It's a total farce. It's a total farce. Yeah. The person we have taken on, a legitimate asylum seeker that has come from France, that has been judged to be a legitimate asylum seeker. We've sent an Indian person back, a man back to France, but he will be sent to India. So France gets nobody and we get an extra person. That's what's happened above the 5,500, above the 5,500 that have come in by small boat since this policy was announced by Labour.
Well, that's why it's such a joke. You know, I don't think Keir Starmer is doing enough with the illegal immigrants at all. And when you think that they have the ability to sort of fight the decision to kick them out, sort of thing, or to take, and we're actually paying the solicitors to fight us to let them stay. I mean, doesn't matter which way we move in this, it's costing this country a huge amount of money.
You're absolutely right, Jill. You're absolutely right, and we'll see what solutions they come up with. Listen, Jill, thank you, and whether they work. Mick in Wallington says press conference was great theatre. Trump unleashed, leaving Starmer like a fish gulping for air. Starmer made a fool of himself over freedom of speech when the world knows he is gaslighting, says Mick. Simon says you can't have a Palestinian state while terrorists are in control and want one nation in Israel gone, and I am neutral. Brittany says, Starmer said free the hostages this time, not free the sausages, thank goodness. And Betty says, Jimmy Kimmel or anyone else who gets cancelled is the antithesis of Charlie Kirk's position and just smacks of an excuse to go full Handmaid's Tale / Project 2025. Free speech is free speech, and that's been the right argument for the last 10 years, so stick to it. Right already has the guns, the armies and the cash. Don't need to crush the left to make them see sense. I think I agree with you, Betty, actually. I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't like what he said. I don't think it was nice, but you either believe in free speech or you don't. Of course, ABC is a commercial organisation. He doesn't have a right to have a show necessarily, but should it have been cancelled because of what he said? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Ryan Sabey is with us from The Sun in just a second, Jack's colleague there, and he's going to give us his thoughts on the press conference. We'll play a few more clips as well. Let me know what you think. You can call me, you can text me, leave a voice note, the number for that as well, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
We know from endless examples that women are often persuaded, cajoled into staying in abusive, physically, sexually abusive relationships by these courts. We know that they lose the custody of their children when the children reach a certain age. We know that they're not given the same financial standing and rights to inheritance. It really is an absolute regime that has no place in this country of ours.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ryan Sabey is with us now, the Deputy Political Editor and the Economics Editor of The Sun. Plenty of economics to talk about as well in terms of that big deal that has been announced as well. There's still some problems in aluminium and steel tariffs. We'll talk about that in a second. Ryan, great to have you with us. What were your overall impressions of the press conference? I think Starmer will be breathing a sigh of relief that he basically got away with it there.
Yeah, I think he will be mightily relieved, and it'll be those people who actually preparing for these big press conferences. This is such a massive set-piece event for Downing Street, and just one question can throw a Prime Minister off kilter. But I think on balance, they'll be happy with it. I think they'll be also very, very happy, and I'm sure they'd have prepared for this to the nth degree, would have been preparing for questions on Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. Now, that only came up in the very, very last question, but that was a hurdle I don't think Donald Trump or Sir Keir Starmer actually wanted to get into the weeds of. And the fact that there was only one question, it came at the end, meant they could just skirt around it. But I thought there's lots of topics there that...
It's interesting on Epstein as well, Ryan, when the fact that Donald Trump said that he didn't really know Peter Mandelson. I'm sure Peter Mandelson will have been absolutely livid at that. He, of course, prided himself on having a sort of hotline to the White House, but actually Donald Trump, despite the fact he must have met him and indeed accepted his credentials and met him on a number of occasions, is really distanced himself quite dramatically there from Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, I was staggered actually when I heard that response from Donald Trump, because I can remember them together shaking hands in the White House, and there's photographic evidence of those two meeting. And I think Donald Trump there has just pleaded some kind of ignorance just to get him through the press conference. But I thought Sir Keir was into his stride when he talked about Mandelson, basically because he'd repeated the answer that he gave just a few days ago. He saw the new evidence, and it was a time to get rid of him. He knew that answer like the back of the hand, and very quickly closed the press conference after that. So I think that was possibly sort of one of the sort of trickier moments, but it was closed down. And I think, as I say, Downing Street and Sir Keir will be breathing a sigh of relief that the two-day state visit overall has really sort of gone off without too many hitches.
One thing they did disagree about, but disagreed agreeably about, was the recognition of a Palestinian state. Let's just remind ourselves what happened at the press conference at Chequers. This is what happened a little bit earlier on, about an hour ago.
The question of recognition needs to be seen, and so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have.
I want the hostages released now, right now, not 1, 2, we'll give you 3 more tomorrow, and, you know, like it's been, but we're the ones that got all the hostages released. We got many, many came to the Oval Office, and I've heard stories like I've never thought even possible.
So what did you make of that? Because clearly, in regard to the recognition of a Palestinian state, the UK is going to be one of 4 countries that does that towards the end of next week, adding to the 147 of the world's nations that do already. But they seem to just kind of talk about it and say, well, we disagree and that's the way things are.
Yeah, I'd like to know what happened behind the scenes there when they were talking in private, and I think maybe some of that will come out in the days to come. But they both seem to have sort of separate lines to take on that. Donald Trump talking about the hostages, and Keir Starmer just sort of skirting around, not even touching that subject, or the
it's very diplomatic, Donald Trump, wasn't it? I haven't seen him as diplomatic before. He's usually much more bombastic.
Yeah, I think it was in the spirit of what's happened over the past 2 days, the state visit, the state banquet. Very good friends, obviously, now with Charles, the King, and Camilla. I just don't think he wanted to get into a diplomatic route, and I think that probably is to come in the coming days. Donald Trump is to go to the United Nations in the coming days. Britain, or Sir Keir Starmer, won't be, but we will be obviously teaming up with France and Germany to talk about the recognising Palestine. So it's going to be a difficult few days when all those world leaders get together in New York.
Certainly the question that your colleague at the press conference, Jack Elsom, asked about migration, I thought was a really good one. Let's just remind ourselves what Jack said. We spoke to him a bit earlier on in the programme, but this is what he said at the press conference. Let's replay this clip.
Migration is at record levels in Britain. The Prime Minister is trying to tackle that. What advice would you give to the man standing next to you on trying to stop illegal migration in Britain? I
told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Jack, let me just deal with the question of returns, because this is obviously an issue we're taking incredibly seriously. We struck the returns arrangement with France, and notwithstanding the challenges to that scheme, which you've seen in the last few days, a flight went off at 6:15 this morning, successfully returning someone under that scheme. It can be done. It was done early this morning, so I can confirm that that flight went. It went successfully, and I'm pleased about that. Now we need to ramp that up at scale, which was always envisaged under the scheme, but it's very important that we have been able to prove that the proof of concept.
Very interesting in regard to what Trump said, do what's necessary, send in the military if necessary. What did you make of that? That was actually, again, in a polite and reasonable way, pretty much a point of disagreement between the two men.
Yeah, I think it was typical of the no-nonsense attitude from Donald Trump, and I think one thing that Sir Keir Starmer can probably learn from Donald Trump is actually to try and tackle the small boats problem head on. Now, they seem to have a review ongoing on the European Convention of Human Rights that may not report back for several months, but if Donald Trump was here and he had this small boats problem, he would be sort of trying to sort it out and get on with it within days. And he told Keir Starmer, you've got to act very quickly, especially when it comes to the military. Now, it's been spoken about for many years now. This small boats crisis has been ongoing since 2018. Why, the public don't seem to understand, why can't you send in the military? Why can't we have police boots or military boots on the ground in France to stop this? Yeah. And it's difficult for the public to understand how has this problem got out of hand just so quickly. So very, very clear message from Donald Trump. You do whatever you have to do to stop this problem, because this is one thing that is putting your government in jeopardy. And Sir Keir Starmer, time is kind of, in a way, I wouldn't say running out for him quite yet, but he's got to get on with him, because it's been a year and those numbers are just going up and up.
You're absolutely right, Ryan, and his numbers are going down and down, minus 50% approval rating as well. Ryan, thank you. That's Ryan Sabey there, Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun. Gian's been in touch to say the President wasn't going to humiliate Starmer out of respect to the King, but thought the first one, Starmer, looked uncomfortable. The Chancellor didn't look too happy either. Alison says the law needs changing around legal aid. The migrants should not be able to get it. If the immigration lawyers are so keen on all of these unknown people in the UK, then they should do the work pro bono. Then we will see how many lawyers are doing it purely for the money. Alison, very interestingly actually, front page of the Telegraph today, Home Office Charities Guide for Migrants to Avoid Deportation. This is the Bail for Immigration Detainees organisation. A notebook has been created, and it's received more than £400,000 in comic relief donations, benefits from charitable tax relief. It has now produced this detailed method which could assist migrants in beating the Prime Minister's policy. Well, we know at least a couple of them have already, and only one person so far has been sent to France, and they'll be deported to India. So we're at least one up and France is one down, so it's not one in, one out at all, to say nothing of the 5,500 people who have come here on small boats since the policy was announced. We'll get an American reaction to that press conference. Michael Yaki is standing by, former senior advisor to Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives. We'll talk to Michael Yaki in a second. I want your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to John, who says, are you saying that, like Jimmy Kimmel, you can lie on air without facing any consequences? Go ahead and try it. Free speech has its limits, but when it crosses into deliberate lying, both he and you must face the repercussions of your actions. Listen, I don't want people to lie on air. I try my very best to give you just facts on this station. I will make errors from time to time. I try to apologise for them if I do. I don't like, as I say, I don't like what Jimmy Kimmel said. I don't think it was right. I don't think I would have said it. I wouldn't have put that, I wouldn't have said that on a broadcast. We'll talk about that in just a second, actually, with Michael Yaki. He's a US political analyst and former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. But Michael, perhaps I could talk to you first about what the President has been saying about Russia and Ukraine.
Sure.
Great to have you on the programme, as always. Let's just remind ourselves...
Always glad to see you, Peter.
Thank you, Michael. Let's just remind ourselves what was said about Vladimir Putin. Strong words, I think, from Donald Trump here. This is what he said.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. But that turned out to be, I thought it might be among the easiest of the group.
What were your impressions of that particular aspect of things, Michael, and the press conference more generally?
Well, I mean, and yeah, specifically with regard to Putin and the Ukraine, we've kind of heard this from the president before, but the question always is, and there wasn't no actually follow up on this. What are you going to do with your disappointment? He kind of gave a we're going to do something in 2 weeks, in 30 days. That became 2 weeks. That has passed. The United States Congress has a bill ready to go to put even more sanctions on Putin and the oligarchs. That has gone nowhere. They're waiting for the president to give a signal. So I guess the question is going to be nice words. They kind of reflect, I think, what the president is thinking. But now the question is, what will the president do? And that's, I think, what the American media right now is still trying to figure out, if that's going to go anywhere else.
The United Kingdom and the United States are definitely united on an approach, largely anyway, to Ukraine, probably more united than they've been for a while. But certainly in regard to the Middle East, it's different. The Prime Minister talking about recognising a Palestinian state. He'll probably do that on behalf of the UK at the end of next week in New York at the UN General Assembly. I wonder, Michael, what you thought of what President Trump said there. There seemed to be, yes, disagreement, but he didn't really get into the issue of recognition. He talked more about the hostages, being very clear that he wanted the hostages back as soon as possible.
Right. Well, I think if you listen to the question, a lot of it was actually about Gaza City and what Netanyahu is doing in terms of occupying and blowing up all the buildings in Gaza City. And what you saw was what a politician would do, which is he answered the question he wanted to answer, which was, I want to get the hostages out, everything like that, not dealing with the humanitarian crisis that's occurring in Gaza. And I think as everyone knows, is tied in many ways to the position that the Prime Minister has taken, that the Prime Minister in Canada has taken as well. You know, it's really more about as a leverage point against Netanyahu to try and get aid and relief into Gaza. And the president decided he just wasn't going to touch that at all, even though he has said on occasion that he's disappointed with what's happening in Gaza and feels for what's happening to the children there. But again, for us in the States, the question is always going to be, you know, where do deeds match the words? And I think a lot of people are waiting to see that.
And within that context, I mean, 147 states already recognise the state of Palestine. Will 4 more, including the UK, really make a difference in terms of how this is viewed in Washington? It is important. I'm against it. I don't think Starmer should do it. But from an American perspective, does it make life any more difficult, easy? Does it change things in any way in terms of what is clearly a very strong special relationship? They're both at pains to talk about that, both today and indeed in Donald Trump's case over the course of this visit.
Well, I think our special relationship transcends just international issues in general. I mean, this is a bilateral camaraderie that goes back almost, well, not quite 200 years, but about 250 years ago, we were not quite happy with each other. But
One way of putting it.
It's been something that has been tested and tried and found to be true time and time again. So I think that from the international community, it would make some impact. But I think, as the reporter's question to President Trump noted, the only person who could actually probably get Netanyahu to do something would be President Trump. And he's kind of signaled today, no. And I don't think that anything that Great Britain or France or Germany or Canada would do would influence what Trump would do with regard to Netanyahu.
Yeah, I remember learning about the Boston Tea Party, believe it or not, from Mary Poppins, a film I watched as a child, where Mr. Banks, who's of course the banker, the father of the children, who Mary looks after, a very upright, sort of quite serious person, who says, talks about the Boston Tea Party and the fact that casks of tea were thrown into Boston Harbour, making them undrinkable, and then he says, even for Americans, which is a wonderful little touch there. So
even today, you really can't make a good pot of tea in Boston. It just doesn't work out.
Really? Okay. I must try that the next time I'm there. I've only been there once. But yeah, speaking of comedy, actually, Jimmy Kimmel is someone who a lot of people think is very funny. A lot of people think perhaps went too far in regard to what he said about Charlie Kirk's assassin. This is what Jimmy Kimmel had said on his late night show, now cancelled.
Some new lows over the weekend, with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Well, that show now is gone. In fact, on Friday night, there's going to be a tribute to Charlie Kirk. Let's just see what President Trump said about the cancellation of the late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel, and then we'll get Michael Yaki's reaction.
He was a great young man. Incredible future. Some people said he might be president someday. I told him, I said, Charlie, I think you have a good shot someday at being president. And he just wanted to take care of youth.
He went on to be very critical of Jimmy Kimmel and said that he got cancelled because of a lack of talent, not necessarily because, strictly speaking, on free speech issues. Michael, coming from a Democratic perspective, what's your take on this?
Well, I think what's interesting is that the president chose the answer that would insulate him from an attack on free speech. Right? One of the things that he did, he issued an executive order on his inauguration after he came in the second time, basically telling the networks you have to abide by and encourage free speech. You can't cancel anybody, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, Stephen Colbert, head of the host of the CBS late night show, his show was canceled days after he criticized the leaders at Paramount for what they were doing to President Trump. Here, just hours after the Trump-appointed chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, which governs broadcasting and licensing of the airwaves in the United States, came out and basically said that ABC needs to do something about Jimmy Kimmel, and then they pulled that off the air. Everyone was going, is this cancellation culture? But you saw what the president said. He decided to stay away from that and just say he had no talent, it was low ratings, etc. But it is something that a lot of people here are talking about.
Because ironically, Charlie Kirk is someone who was actually about as much of a free speech, not quite absolutist, but someone who wanted people to disagree with him, who wanted to say things. We have a listener who has texted in to say, well, hold on, he was telling lies. But the point is, I suppose, whether you think he's telling lies or whether you don't, the point is that Jimmy Kimmel's not entitled to a show. It's not about free speech. He still has free speech. He just doesn't have a huge platform in order to do it. And that's a commercial decision, isn't it?
And what people forget is that there have been a number of people in the business, in show business, who, because of what they said or things that they did, lost the opportunity to do that. So it is, as you said, it is not your privilege to have a TV show. It is your privilege to be able to speak. But then the question has been that there's been some controversy years before that people who spoke paid a penalty in their commercial careers, and there was a very much a anti-that position by Trump and his administration coming in. And is there a double standard? Are they walking the talk that they came in with? Is it simply ABC deciding that they're going to cave into pressure? We don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that, as you said, no one is entitled, neither you nor I, are entitled to be on this airwave, but we can't say what we want to say anywhere else we want to.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. That's Michael Yaki, US political analyst and former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Trump is now leaving Chequers. He is, I think we can see the shots now of him standing on the steps there with, he's on the left, then Melania Trump beside him, Donald Trump and Melania Trump on the left, then Keir Starmer with Lady Starmer, Victoria Starmer. They're shaking hands, saying goodbye. He's getting into the Beast alongside Melania Trump. The Beast, of course, is incredibly bomb-proof and shock-proof Chrysler car that he's getting into. They formally said goodbye. He'll now go to Marine One. Both Melania and Donald Trump will go to Marine One, where there will be choppered to we've just seen, it's brilliant, we can see on the screen right now a Secret Service woman actually with the sunglasses looking very threatening. You certainly wouldn't mess with her, and they're getting into the car now and going along. It's got two flags on the front of it, an American flag with stars and stripes there, and of course the Union flag. The car is moving and it will be going to Marine One, which, as we were talking to Jack Elsom there about half an hour ago, was coming into Chequers. We think bagpipes are playing to bagpipe him out. Of course, Donald Trump's mother was Scottish. He references that an awful lot, and indeed referenced it during the press conference. So those cars, the motorcade as they call it, going to another part of Chequers, going to the helipad that is there. And then we will see the Marine One take off. It'll go to Stansted. Chequers is in Buckinghamshire. Stansted, of course, is, I'm not too sure how far away from Chequers Stansted is, but it's not that far anyway, so they won't take a particularly long time. They have a couple of Marine Ones, of Marine One and Marine Two, so they're decoys, of course, as well, to make sure that there are no attacks, or obviously the security for this visit has been incredibly tight, far tighter than other visits previously, the state visit and others as well. We know that the Chequers is now saying goodbye to the Trumps, and they will get on Marine One and off they go from Chequers to Stansted, and then Air Force One, the huge jumbo jet that carries the president, will go back to Andrews Air Force Base, and then the president will be back in the White House. Although the two men will meet again next week at the United Nations, and of course we'll bring you full coverage of that here on Talk. We'll talk about the economic aspect of all of this next. Liam Halligan is standing by, and we'll talk to him. Stay with us.
Gordon Brown came to power in the late 1990s, and he said you know, we're going to balance the books across the economic cycle. We might borrow during the bad times, but we'll repay debt during the good times. He stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And, well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bob in Chiswick in West London says, I thought Starmer made the recognition of a Palestinian state conditional on them releasing the hostages and Hamas laying down their arms. Without all that this equals hostages equals prizes, says Bob in Chiswick. Yeah, there were apparently some conditions. I don't think they have particularly been met. One thing that will come out of this, of course, is the economic side of this visit, and Liam Halligan, the economist and broadcaster, is with us now. Liam, very, very good to talk to you. What did you make of the press conference, and what do you make of the economic benefits of this visit? There were some people whinging about the fact that it cost 15 million quid. If you get billions of pounds of investment out of it, well, that presumably pays off.
Well, the trouble is, Peter, that the costs of the pomp and the pageantry are immediate and definite, and the investment baubles are vague, very much in the future, and we'll probably never know how much of these headline numbers are actually delivered when it comes down to it. Look, this visit could have gone a lot worse for Keir Starmer. I think the panjandrums within Number 10 will be relieved that there was no great dressing down of the Labour Prime Minister, no great sort of Zelensky moment. They managed to bury their differences over Labour wanting to chide Israel, burying their differences over wind power, burying their differences over the alarm that a lot of people in the US administration have over the state of free speech in the UK. And there were some economic benefits, I suppose. Most of the 150 billion odd quid of investment, we don't know what time frame that's over, is going to come courtesy of an asset management company, an investment house called BlackRock. With all respect to my friends at BlackRock, they're not always known for keeping the public interest front and centre, to say the least. But in general, I think this went pretty well for Starmer, so you've got to hand it to him. He's had a pretty bad 2 weeks. And at the very least, Peter, I think this state visit, obviously Trump was made up to be given a second straight visit. Did I mention it was at Windsor Castle? Surely that's better than Buckingham Palace. That's what I've been told. You know, the US president loves this kind of stuff. The one fly in the ointment on the economic front is that the UK was meant to have this special relationship, ritzy-ditzy tariff deal with America of just 10% rather than 25% taxes on exports to the US, unlike the European Union. But that doesn't apply to steel, and it doesn't apply particular to manufacturers that are made mainly of steel. So a lot of automotive exporters in the UK, and the likes of JCB, who export a lot of high-value goods that use lots of steel, they're not happy.
Yeah, and productivity numbers, growth numbers in the UK, not good reading for Starmer or Rachel Reeves in recent days either.
Yeah, this product, well, firstly, we should say, Peter, it wouldn't be a proper discussion between you and me on a day like this unless we mentioned that the Bank of England held interest rates.
Yeah, 4%.
4%. I personally would have been absolutely outraged if they'd have cut interest rates even more, with inflation about to hit double the Bank of England's 2% target. But some people on the MPC, whatever, still managed to convince themselves that they should be cutting interest rates. I don't know what these people know about economics, but it's not any kind of economics that I've ever learnt or experienced.
And their job is to keep inflation under control. That's sort of the number one thing.
If the Bank of England had cut interest rates today, the 30-year gilt yield would have gone up because the markets would have been so alarmed that these guys are just political pawns and don't know what they're doing. Just as a sidebar on the Bank of England, the Bank of England did rightly, agreeing with me and other commentators, and indeed, it must be said, with Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform, who's had a public discussion with Andrew Bailey. They did agree to slow down the rate at which the Bank of England starts putting bonds back into the market, which is a very sensible move by the Bank of England. It took them a long time to get there, but, you know, fair dues, chapeau, they got there. Now, these productivity numbers, this is kind of a bit of an accounting game. The Office for Budget Responsibility, it assumes over the next few years that growth is going to miraculously recover from sort of 0.5 to 1%, which is where it's been over recent years, to more like 1.5 to 2%. And the only basis on which they've got to make that assumption, and without that assumption, the fiscal situation looks a lot worse because the economy growing more slowly won't generate as much tax revenue, will mean more benefit, welfare benefit, unemployment benefit. So these productivity numbers, these built-in assumptions in the fine print of the budget documents that productivity is going to grow suddenly, miraculously. That means better technology, more skillful people, investors making more returns on their capital. Yeah, we've been assuming rising productivity numbers for years and they've never materialised. The OBR is now saying, look, we can't keep assuming these crazy increases in productivity numbers, so our growth estimates are going to be a lot worse going forward. So basically, Chancellor, a few months before the budget that is make or break in your career, many people would say make or break for this Labour government, at least a Labour government under Keir.
Many problems ahead. Thank you, Liam. That's Liam Halligan, the economist there. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Loads to discuss, including that big press conference, the visit between Donald Trump and, of course, the King, and indeed the press conference with Keir Starmer. The Trumps, Melania and Donald are taking the 36-mile journey from Chequers to Stansted. Air Force One is on the runway and about ready to take the President and the First Lady back to America. We'll reflect on that press conference, what we learned with it. The former leader of the Conservatives, Iain Duncan Smith, will be with us in a second. I want your reaction to 0344 499 1000. This hour we'll talk about the immigration aspect of it too. Also the fact that Jimmy Kimmel has been cancelled from ABC. We'll talk as well about the sport and everything the Sun has to tell us about that. Loads to discuss. I want your views on it as much as possible. As you know, I get as many calls, texts, tweets, voice notes on between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to the main number. You can send me a WhatsApp text message to the main number, or you can ring me on the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7 when Kevin O'Sullivan takes over. Let's get lots of your opinions on the air. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, we can look right now at the runway at Stansted Airport. That is Air Force One, the jumbo jet, of course, that will take the Trumps back to Washington. They're in the air at the moment in a smaller vehicle, in a helicopter called Marine One. They will be brought the 36-mile journey. They're doing it at the moment. They took off about, I think, 15 minutes ago, so I'd imagine they'll be there fairly shortly. We'll bring you right up to date with what's happening. So Trump and Melania Trump, the First Lady, on their way to Air Force One, and we will see them getting on that plane and then heading off to Washington. Starmer and Trump will meet again next week in New York at the United Nations General Assembly, where there will be a recognition by the United Kingdom of a state of Palestine. But actually, it was migration, free speech, being a Christian country, Jimmy Kimmel, loads of different aspects of this debate that came up during quite a long press conference, nearly an hour actually. I just want to remind ourselves, before we speak to Iain Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Conservatives, Jack Elsom, our colleague at The Sun, he had a question on migration to Trump and to Starmer. Let's just remind ourselves what Jack asked at the press conference, and then I'll get Iain Duncan Smith's reaction.
Illegal migration is at record levels in Britain. The Prime Minister is trying to tackle that. What advice would you give to the man standing next to you on trying to stop illegal migration in Britain? I
told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Jack, let me just deal with the question of returns, because this is obviously an issue we're taking incredibly seriously. We struck the returns arrangement with France, and notwithstanding the challenges to that scheme, which you've seen in the last few days, a flight went off at 6:15 this morning, successfully returning someone under that scheme. It can be done. It was done early this morning, so I can confirm that that flight went successfully, and I'm pleased about that. Now we need to ramp that up at scale, which was always envisaged under the scheme, but it's very important that we have been able to prove that the proof of concept.
So on immigration, of course, we have this one-in, one-out scheme, or so-called. What's actually happened is that 5,500 people have come in since it was announced. One person has been sent back to France, one so far, and that person will be sent to India because they're an Indian national. Let's see what Sir Iain Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Conservative Party, thinks about all of this. Sir Iain, thank you for joining me this evening on the programme. What are your impressions of not just the migration aspect, but the body language, the discussions, the diplomacy of that press conference, and indeed this visit?
Well, first of all, I think it's important, overarching anything about politics, that the United States and the United Kingdom are together, both militarily and as far as possible economically. So the state visit is an important affair because it re-solidifies this, and the President himself does seem to like the UK personally. Mother was obviously Scots. So to that extent, a state visit with the most powerful man in the world and a country that is a close ally, English-speaking, has English common law. So we're very close in lots and lots of ways, as we are with other English-speaking countries around the world. So that ticks that box which says it's right to do and it's important to stay linked to the United States and them to us. However, during the course of that, there were a couple of questions that came in. You just played one of them just now, and there the President of the United States is able to say they've had a pretty major success on the border. You know, they've deployed troops and everything else, and they've cut the numbers coming in dramatically. I don't know whether it's down to zero or not, but they have dramatically got on top of that in the last 9 or 10 months. Contrast that with the United Kingdom, where the Labour government, as it was elected, came in on the basis that they would somehow wave a magic wand, which the Conservatives hadn't managed to do, and stop the numbers coming in. First of all, it was smash the gangs. Well, that didn't very successful, because there are probably more gangs than there were before operating.
They say they've disrupted 52 gangs.
Yeah, disrupted 52 gangs, and 52 more have sprung up at the same time. I mean, the fact is that it doesn't work. You can crack down on them as much as you like. The problem is the fact is that people are prepared to pay. They pay thousands to get into these boats, and so there will always be criminals ready to get that done for them. And then they decide, well, they've got to get people off the island. Well, great, that's what we were wanting to do with the Rwanda deal, which you didn't back. But look out, here comes the Convention of Human Rights and all the other bits like the Rights of the Child and the Refugee Convention, and the judges will all use that. And what happened? They used it to stop the first individual going over. You had 2 or 3 efforts at it. Finally, he says they've got 1 person off. But here's the ridiculous nature of this deal. So they're going to take 1 in for 1 out. But the trouble is the 1 in will be a legal migrant, and they will be able to bring their families in with them. So it's not 1 in, 1 out.
Yeah, very true.
It's 1 out and maybe up to 10 or 12 people in. Yeah. It's a bad deal. The only way is to do what we were proposing to do, which is you're going to have to break with the convention. You're going to have to say judges cannot reference this for migrancy, and we should send them off to a country like Rwanda for processing, which would act as a massive disincentive.
Brad in Cambridge has been in touch on WhatsApp messages and says, I just cannot believe Starmer can stand in front of this entire nation and lie through his teeth to Trump about free speech and illegal immigration. He's a sycophantic weasel. Well, Sir Iain, perhaps you wouldn't use that language, but I'm interested in your thoughts on what Starmer talked about free speech and his views on free speech. Let's just play another clip from this press conference.
I'm all for free speech. I'm also for protecting children from things that will harm them, paedophiles, those that peddle suicide, which had a terrible consequence for individual, particularly teenagers. And so that's the balance we strike. But we have had freedom of speech in this country for a very long time, and we will always protect it.
Well, clearly he's talking about the Online Safety Act, his views there. There are many who feel that free speech is under threat in this country. I'm one of them, as is J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. It was interesting that I thought President Trump was actually pretty diplomatic when it came to that on a number of other issues, like Israel-Palestine as well, Sir Iain.
Yeah. Well, on the freedom of speech, the fact is I think we have gone too far. And the reality is that freedom of speech also comes with the right to offend. And that is just part of it. You know, it isn't a criminal offence. It shouldn't be a criminal offence if somebody thinks you've taken offence, which is what's been going on. The police have been dragged in. They seem to be too keen to do it and go
30 people a day. 30 people are interviewed a day.
Banging on their door because somebody out there felt offended. Well, hard luck. That's life. You know, being offended. It's only when you deliberately attack somebody with a view to stirring up others deliberately to attack them. That's when it becomes a little on the edge. But even then, you've got to be very careful to trample on freedom of speech. And to some degree, I think some of the Americans are right about us. We've got to rethink our freedom of speech regulations and laws to recognize that taking offense does not make it a criminal offense. It should be considered that that is a right to offend, and that way it works. And I thought also the stuff on Israel, you're right, the president was being remarkably diplomatic in not saying. He just said we had a disagreement. They do have a disagreement because in the middle of all of this, I think European nations suddenly stepping in to do this, when we want a peace deal and we want an end to the fighting, and that what you want is Israel to stop and the prisoners to be released, the hostages to be released, and Hamas to disappear, because they have brought this all down on the Gazans, which is terrible.
Isn't it much more this recognition? Isn't it much more about the backbenches of the Labour Party? I just think we've got to be a bit cynical about this. I certainly do not think that a Palestinian state should be recognised. First of all, where is it? Is a very good question. That's probably the first question. But 147 states right around the world do recognise a Palestinian state. Will 4 more, including the UK, really make much of a difference?
Well, the question I simply ask is, if we're going to do this, what are we recognising?
Yep.
So what is the entity that we recognise? Where is the government that we recognise the entity to? So it becomes a political statement, which some may say is a good idea. Others may say, well, it needs to, to have any impact, it needs to be practical. It needs to be a state that you consider. I mean, Jordan, for example, it can be argued, is the real Palestinian state. So I've heard that. So my answer to this is, why do you do this? If you're going to do it for as a public statement rather than anything else, then you should say this is our view, but it doesn't mean that we have a particular involvement with it. Or you say that we're recognising an entity.
It'll also be very interesting.
I've still yet not heard how this is being described yet. So I thought it's one thing to do that, but it's another to have an understanding and to explain to people what will happen directly that will change things as a result.
It'll be very interesting to see as well whether the conditions that Keir Starmer was talking about are actually reached. Sir Iain, I know you're someone who's very open about your faith. Your faith is something you take very seriously in a way that many other politicians don't talk about. And actually, Starmer was asked about England and whether it is a Christian country. Let's just see what he said about this.
Question to the Prime Minister, if you don't mind. Are we still a Christian country?
In terms of a Christian country, I was christened, so that is my church has been all my life, and we are, that is wired into our informal constitution. Of course, we celebrate many other faiths as well, and I'm really proud that we're able to do so as a country.
I think it was pretty uncomfortable during that question. What did you think, Sir Iain?
Well, we are predominantly a Christian country, and that doesn't mean you don't look after other people. Or, it's just a statement of fact. We are essentially, and all right, church attendance has gone down, but that still means that people stand by many of the basic tenets of what they may have been brought up to believe in within Christianity. So I think that governs us. And many of our laws are based, pretty much on the 10 Commandments, and so that is all part of that process, and that involves, of course, Judaism as well. So my main point is he should have said, yes, we are predominantly a Christian country, and I myself am a believer. He might have said that. That's what he was sort of edging around. I was christened. Well, okay, what next?
Yeah, lots of people were and believe nothing and haven't been to church since.
And I think we are going to be we're peculiarly defensive about believing as a Christian in Christianity, in God. And I just think to myself, I don't see why you should, apologize or excuse for it. Muslims don't, Jews don't, lots of other believers don't apologize for their belief because they have a right to believe in the way that they do. But somehow it does seem to me at times Christians are made in politics to believe that they shouldn't be saying it.
Sir Iain, thank you very much indeed. I can see on the screen in front of me that's Sir Iain Duncan Smith there, by the way, the former Conservative Party leader. Marine 1 and Marine 2 are coming into Stansted now. They're low in the sky and they are near Air Force 1. When Air Force 1 is being boarded, when the Trumps are there, we will of course bring you that footage live on Talk. In the meantime, I just want to talk to Leslie. He's given me a ring from County Durham on this faith issue. Leslie, thanks for giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say about this?
Oh, hi, Peter. I just wanted to say that I watched the
press conference.
Oh gosh, yes, thank you. And the thing, I'm used to the lies. If you look at Donald Trump's face, it said it all, and where his eyes were going. And the thing that got me the most is the Christian.
Yeah, I thought he felt. It felt to me. I don't know why it felt to you, Leslie, but it felt to me that Keir Starmer was sort of going, "Oh, what on earth am I going to say here?" When all he needed to say, as Iain Duncan Smith just said a minute ago, was going, "We're a predominantly Christian country with lots of other religions. We're tolerant. We're open. But yeah, basically, we're a Christian country. That's the way things are." Next question.
I mean, that's it about the whole government. They always put us on the back burner. You know what I mean? Like, and now they're doing it with the. They've been doing it for a while, but now it's with the faith. So that you just can't. I'm not a religious person, but that just really. I just think it's really. It's a no-brainer for him to do something or say something that's actually not a lie. And actually answer a straight question. I think where Donald Trump is concerned, he has Keir Starmer's number. It's all an act.
Yeah, well, it's very true, Leslie. I think Trump came out of that better than anybody, really, certainly better than Starmer did. I should just say on the screen you can see Marine 1, which is the helicopter. I think it's a Chinook, I could be wrong, that is about to land on the runway at Stansted Airport, not too far away from Air Force One, which is waiting there. We'll see that land in just a second. We'll see the Trumps, both Melania and President Donald, getting on Air Force One. I just want to play a voice note from Jason on the religious aspect of what was being talked about at the press conference as well. Jason has been in touch.
See, Peter, when asked if we're a Christian country, he talked about himself being christened, he talked about his view, didn't talk about the country, and then he had to throw in about all the other faiths. The man is an absolute traitor. This country is not a Christian country anymore because we're being forced to reject it, being forced to be taken over. Unbelievable. The man is a weasel.
Thank you for that, Jason. Much appreciated. You can send your voice notes in on 0344 499 1000. Just send it through WhatsApp the same way you do anything else. We're keeping an eye on what's happening on the runway. They're not too far away from Air Force One. You've got Marine 1 there are two of them, of course, Marine 1 and Marine 2. We're not, the idea is that we don't know which one the President and First Lady are on to keep them as anonymous as possible, because obviously it's a massive security risk when they're in the sky. Air Force One is a very, very, very secure plane, the most secure plane in the world. Certainly Marine 1 and Marine 2 are too. We'll see them come off in just a second. In the meantime, John in Woodford has messaged me to say, why did Starmer not state the UK is simply a Christian country? Jane says, how convenient the migrant deported on the day of the press conference. Kyle says, just to pick up from yesterday's comments from the Home Secretary Shabnam Mahmood, who stated Sharia law is not incorporated in British law. Check this out from the government website, allowing Muslims to avoid stamp duty, which is an interesting point on that one as well. Dennis in Manchester says, good afternoon, Peter. With regards to Jimmy Kimmel, whilst he has the right to say what he wants, that's free speech, the Second Amendment gives people three rights to freedom of speech. The right to freedom of speech, not freedom from the consequences of that speech. I disagree with all of those who cheered the murder of Charlie Kirk, but I agree they have the right to do so. However, if they've been fired from their jobs, that's the risk you take, and you have to face those consequences, and I have no sympathy for them. Well, Dennis, I think you're right, and actually I believe in freedom of speech. What I don't agree with is ABC as a network saying that Jimmy Kimmel has a right to a show. No one has a right to a show. I don't have a right to this show. My boss could say today, never mind tomorrow, Peter, you're off the air because you've said something that you shouldn't have said, or you've had a big Ofcom breach or something like that. That is their decision. That's a commercial decision. Free speech is something that is very, very important. It's very dear to us here at the Home of Free Speech. And let's hear some more free speech from Peter, who's in Bushy. He wants to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Peter, we'll just a caveat that we're just keeping an eye on what's happening at Stansted, so I may have to interrupt you at some point. I just apologise in advance, but just tell me your thoughts on the recognition of a Palestinian state.
Well, the recognition of a Palestinian state is purely symbolic, because, as one of your other contributors said, it's got no borders, it's got no government, and to be honest, unless Israel agree to a Palestinian state, it will never happen. The chance of it happening in my lifetime and your lifetime is pretty remote. The two-state solution is more or less dead.
I agree with you, Peter. I was in Israel last week, and I got briefings from various senior people, including the former National Security Advisor, who said, look, the international community bang on about this all the time. They say two-state solution, two-state solution, two-state solution. The fact is that Hamas want a one-state solution, which involves Israel being destroyed, and Israel do not want a two-state solution. What they did was they tried to give the Gaza Strip some form of a state, a version of a state, for about 20 years. What happened there? The 7th of October.
Exactly. I was going to say, in 2005, every Israeli was withdrawn from Gaza. And look what they've done with it. And it's a great shame. They could have been a fantastic state on the border of Israel if it had been handled correctly. And it's a great shame. But until they get rid of the idea of wanting to destroy Israel rather than live with Israel side by side, nothing will ever happen.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. You make a lot of very, very good points there. We can see just on the screen, if you're watching, I'll describe it to you. If you're listening on the radio, there are quite a number of people now moving in the direction of Air Force One. They're standing up and waiting. I think it's the Lord Lieutenant who will be the person who says goodbye to the Trumps formally on behalf of the Queen. And of course, there are various other people lining up there to cheer them off and to say thank you for this very, very important state visit. Just on that issue of the Middle East and a Palestinian state, Elisa in Chelmsford has got in touch with me, and she said that she's written to the Prime Minister. She sent me her letter. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she said essentially, as a dual Israeli UK citizen, I believe this decision is disrespectful to the victims of October the 7th, the 48 remaining hostages and their families. In my view, unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state could be perceived as rewarding terrorism and may encourage further attacks globally. I respectfully urge you to reconsider this decision. I think that sadly for Elisa and sadly for us as a country, I think Starmer is not going to reconsider that decision. I think he's going to recognise a Palestinian state at the UN next week. We'll talk more about Trump leaving. We've got those live footage there of Stansted. The Trumps will be boarding Air Force One very soon. We'll see them do that, hopefully, if they don't do it in the next 2.5 minutes, after the break.
Gordon Brown came to power in the late 1990s, and he said, we're going to balance the books across the economic cycle. We might borrow during the bad times, but we'll repay debt during the good times. He stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And, well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just had a quick look at my tweets there over the break, and the professor has been in touch to say that exchange about illegal immigrants was embarrassing. He's the leader of the UK, for goodness sake. Trump sounded presidential. Starmer sounded like a busted flush. Angela says this love-in for Starmer is laughable. To admit he's still chasing the gangs and deporting just one person, probably paid, and saying he was Christian missed the point of the question. It's embarrassing. Well, we still have the footage on the screen right now of Stansted Airport. Marine One has landed, and we know that the Trumps are very, very shortly going to get on Air Force One. We will see them bid goodbye to the United Kingdom after their historic second state visit. Well, Matthew Bryza is a former White House official in the Obama administration. Matthew, you'll have to forgive me. I'll put a preemptive apology in if the Trumps start walking up the steps there. I'm going to have to go to that, so I'll apologise to you in advance. But I do want to talk to you about a lot of aspects of this, not least the Jimmy Kimmel affair. This is what Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, said on air very recently about Charlie Kirk's death.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Well, Trump reacted to that. This is what he said.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you know, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Fired for lack of talent. Very strong words from the president there. Also, he talked about Charlie Kirk, his admiration for him. This is what Donald Trump said at the press conference.
He was a great young man, credible future. Some people said he might be president someday. I told him, I said, Charlie, I think you have a good shot someday at being president. And he just wanted to take care of youth.
Matthew, this has been something that is, I'm sure, a much bigger story in America. But of course, free speech, the whole aspect of freedom of the press, freedom of broadcasting, freedom of what people can and can't say, whether it's true or not. It's a big, big issue, and it's one that Donald Trump, of course, cares about quite a lot, as does J.D. Vance. Others say that actually the cancellation of people like Jimmy Kimmel is something that Charlie Kirk would not have wanted because he believed in free speech, even if that person is wrong. What do you make of this, Roy?
Yeah, well, President Trump, on his very first day in office, he signed an executive order that not only demanded free speech, but outlawed any form of censorship of the media. And in this case, Jimmy Kimmel didn't say anything about Charlie Kirk, right? He said something about the MAGA base. And he also, one thing that wasn't shown, and it wasn't really talked about in some like in the Washington Post, but another thing that Jimmy Kimmel showed was a clip of President Trump being asked, how do you feel about how are you doing after the murder of Charlie Kirk? And President Trump said, oh, I'm doing great. By the way, the construction crews are here and they're building, you know, the new ballroom or the White House.
Yeah, I saw that clip. He seemed to just very, very briefly answer the question and then talk about the construction of the ballroom. That's something that many people have pointed out, including Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, so I think that made Trump look kind of foolish, and I think maybe, you know, that may be something that prompted the FCC commissioner or chairman to appear to put pressure on ABC, the broadcast network, to cancel the Kimmel show. Now, one more point is that back in July, there was another comedian, another highly satirical comedian named Stephen Colbert, who also is very much attacking Trump all the time, whose show was canceled by a different network, CBS. And at that time, Trump said, well, you know, they should next fire Jimmy Kimmel. And then today, Trump said he should fire 2 additional late night talk show hosts who also criticize him. So there's this weird pattern of Trump saying we have to support free speech, but suggesting that these late night talk show hosts that criticize him be fired.
But it's his free speech, of course, to criticise them and to suggest using his free speech that they could be cancelled their shows. They don't have a right to a show. They have a right to free speech, but they don't have a right to that platform, and that's a commercial decision.
Absolutely. And so absolutely commerciality was part of this decision. Those shows haven't been getting high ratings. But the worrisome point then is that the owners, well, in the United States, smaller companies own the local TV stations that broadcast the big companies broadcast, the big shows. So there's a company called Nexstar that's trying to get permission from the Trump administration, from the same thing, the Federal Communications Commission, to allow it to acquire another set of stations that exceed the existing rule that limit the amount of stations any company can own. So it looks like these companies, local companies, caved into the pressure from the Federal Communications Commissioner to cancel Kimmel because they want their deal approved. And that happened before with Colbert as well, when Paramount was acquiring Skydance.
Okay, just more broadly on the visit and the press conference that was there this afternoon here in the UK, Matthew, do you think this visit has been a success? Do you think Donald Trump will look back on it and say, great, fantastic, job done?
I think he will. It was a beautiful dinner last night, spectacular, all the pomp and circumstance that he loves, and the horse-drawn carriages, all the royal family's spectacular stuff that he loves. I think he probably thought he did really well at the press conference as well. What I don't know is what was agreed privately between the Prime Minister and the President.
Yeah, certainly, and the questions about what they actually said to one another, especially on Israel-Gaza, a very, very interesting one. Matthew, thank you as always. Matthew Bryza there, former White House official in the Obama administration. We can see I think it's Chinook, I think it's Marine One anyway, on the runway there at Stansted. It is edging towards Air Force One. We will see, I would imagine, in the next few minutes. I'm going to take another break now so we don't miss it. Trump's getting back on Air Force One. Stay with us here on Talk. We'll talk in a second as well about the migration aspect of all of this. Kevin Foster is a former immigration minister, so stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you very, very much indeed for all your thoughts. And that is a Chinook, and apparently in the that is Marine One, which we can see on the screen right now, is apparently, yes, it is a Chinook, and apparently it's called a Waka Waka. That's a military term, probably the noise it makes, according to one person with a military background. We also have someone who's corrected me on the fact that the Beast is not actually a Chrysler. It is, what did I say it was? I can't even remember. It's a Chevrolet Suburban, not a Chrysler. Thank you to Tim Buckingham for that. I do appreciate that. And as I say, sometimes I make mistakes. I'm very, very happy to correct them. Thanks also as well as Tim, to Madge Sharp, who says the woke left create a cancel culture and then cry when their mates get cancelled. The hypocrisy is laughable. Also, Nathan says, is it true that Jeremy Kyle is running for a Reform UK MP, as has been reported in the Sun paper today? I sent that to Jeremy, actually. I WhatsApped it to him and he just replied, hysterical. So you'll have to ask him on Monday about it. Julie says, I'm absolutely disgusted with Keir Starmer. He lies constantly about free speech. I could have thrown my TV remote at him. The American lady had a visit from police officers about a Facebook post. Hopefully Sir Keir Starmer will be gone soon. Well, as I say, we can see Marine One. It is edging closer to Air Force One. Marine One is the Chinook, Air Force One is the jumbo jet, and I keep saying the Starmers, the Trumps, of course, are going to get off Marine One very, very soon. We'll talk to Kevin Foster, the former Immigration Minister, now, and Kevin, I will just preemptively apologise that I'm going to have to tell our viewers and listeners what's happening with the Trumps as we do our discussion. But certainly, I'm interested in your thoughts. First of all, thank you for joining me today, and I'm interested in your thoughts on migration. Certainly, Donald Trump earlier on saying that he thought that actually there were perhaps lessons to be learned from America's approach. Send in the military, he said. What do you think of that, Kevin?
Well, there's certainly lessons to be learned from America's approach, and I suspect many in the Home Office will be looking at the situation on the southern US border and how it's changed with the Trump administration with some envy compared to the exact opposite performance in the Channel using the old smash the gang strategy. But let's be clear what we're talking about with sending the military in. A lot of people instantly have the idea that the military is going to actually shoot at people. Well, that isn't going to happen. You know, no service personnel is going to open fire on unarmed civilians. So let's put that one to one side. What the US military is doing, though, is working very closely with ICE, the US Immigration Enforcement Agency, on things like deportation. So, for example, US military aircraft are taking people back to countries they are being deported to. Military are facilitating with the logistics of getting them onto those planes. And then we've already actually used the military a little bit in the Channel, but in, for example, observation, providing surveillance and working with Border Force on some of the specialist capabilities the military have to identify basically boats and people coming into a particular space. So there's certainly lessons to be learned from America's approach. But let's be clear, whilst we may have seen footage of the US military striking at boats containing what Trump calls drugs, guns and dangerous criminals, they do not open fire just on those who are migrants trying to breach the border.
I should say the doors of Marine One have been opened. Donald and Melania Trump will get out very soon. Preparations are being made for that by the military officers and security personnel who are around that. Kevin, just in regard to what's happened, this one in, one out scheme has actually worked, I suppose, is in the loosest possible way. One person has been sent to France, but we know that person is Indian and is going to be sent back to India. So I just wonder whether you think that has the potential to work. Just hold your fire just 1 second on that, actually, because Donald Trump is getting off the plane right now. He and Melania Trump are going to, there they are, Donald Trump coming off the Marine One, the Chinook, and Melania Trump following him. There are officers, of course, military officers saluting him. He's saluted them. He's taken Melania by the hand there, and they're walking along the runway. This is at Stansted Airport, and it's a short walk to Air Force One, of course, the jumbo jet that is going to bring Donald Trump and Melania Trump and many, many members of their administration back to Washington. They're waving to the assembled crowds there and the cameras and the press as well. They're flanked, of course, as they always are and will be for the rest of their lives, by security officers who are with him. And there's a handshake there as well, saying goodbye there from I would imagine that is the Ambassador John Roscoe. But I'm not too sure who that is, but certainly the Trumps are being formally waved off and being told that thanked, of course, for coming across to the United Kingdom for this historic second visit. That press conference earlier on in the day, we know that Keir Starmer gave many answers, including on immigration. We're going to look back on that in a second with Kevin Foster, who's the former Immigration Minister, and certainly what is happening now. You see those Secret Service agents always look like Secret Service agents, don't they? They've got the sunglasses on no matter what the weather, and they are ushering President Trump and Melania Trump. They're just walking up the steps right now up to Air Force One. I'm sure we'll have a wave at the top, the two of them on the same step each time. Melania wearing a brown jacket and a blue suit that Donald Trump has been wearing, his sort of trademark blue suit, and I think a red tie from memory is what he's been wearing today. They're about to turn round and wave off the well-wishers. Donald Trump, yes, in his red tie there, pointing at a few people, and he's got his fist clenched there in defiance there. Wave from both Melania Trump and Donald Trump. In they go to Air Force One, and then in a few minutes' time, when they're ready to go, and that is when it happens, a phone call takes place when the president says to the pilot, "I'm ready to go." There are various people carrying bags, military officers, attaches, many other people to get on this plane. When it takes off, of course, we'll bring that to you live here on Talk. Kevin, to come back to you, Kevin Foster, the former immigration minister, let's go back and see what Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, asked about migration at the press conference today. We'll play that clip and then get Kevin's response. This is the press conference now about an hour and a half ago. It happened at Chequers, and Jack had the second question. This is what Jack Elsom asked on immigration.
Illegal migration is at record levels in Britain. The Prime Minister is trying to tackle that. What advice would you give to the man standing next to you on trying to stop illegal migration in Britain? I
told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Jack, let me just deal with the question of returns, because this is obviously an issue we're taking incredibly seriously. We struck the returns arrangement with France, and notwithstanding the challenges to that scheme, which you've seen in the last few days, a flight went off at 6:15 this morning, successfully returning someone under that scheme. It can be done. It was done early this morning, so I can confirm that that flight went successfully, and I'm pleased about that. Now we need to ramp that up at scale, which was always envisaged under the scheme, but it's very important that we have been able to prove that the proof of concept.
Kevin, are you convinced by those answers from Keir Starmer? I know you're from a Conservative background, former Conservative MP, but in regard to this plan and in regard to this scheme that has seen one person sent to France, he talked about 35,000 people being repatriated. I mean, the fact is the vast majority of them are voluntary returns, aren't they?
Yeah, the vast majority were voluntary returns, actually to countries that we don't get many small boat migrants from. I think when they boasted at the end of last year that the 3 largest ever deportation flights had gone on, I think they headed to Brazil. Well, Brazil isn't a country that we get too many small boat migrants from for pretty obvious reasons of geography. So in terms of this issue, actually Donald Trump can talk from a position of some significant success. He can talk about basically this sort of Gordian knot style approach of slicing through it. You see the US military, the courts, the whole process, backing it up with threats of things like trade and visa sanctions. So, Colombian president wanted to make a political stand, a potential 50% tariff on coffee exports to the US later, and he was sending his own plane to collect the people Donald Trump wanted to get rid of out of the United States. So there's a lot to be said for, if you want to resolve this, to take in the sort of Trump-style approach of an all parts of government involved. Now, for Keir Starmer, I suspect that big sigh of relief you heard across the country this morning would have been at the Home Office that finally they got someone off to France under the one-in, one-out deal, as it was called, or since it's been signed, 5,500 in and one out. Yeah. So there is a limit. It'll have some impact, of course, but I think the issue is particularly interesting, thinking through who they selected. It was an Indian migrant. Apparently France had requested an Indian migrant because then they could offer them €2,500 to go to then be deported and moved on to India. Now, India, there are a sizable community here of people who have not got immigration status, who are Indian nationals, but they're not in the top 5 of small boat arrivals. The real test of this sort of policy is if you can remove an Afghan, an Eritrean, a Syrian, someone from Kurdistan, those sorts of countries, that's when you start seeing some impact in terms of actual small boat migrants.
Yeah.
But even then, the numbers here are limited. We're sending people back to France, and it's to see how much of this can be done. And of course,
they're coming up with all sorts of excuses as well, Kevin. I mean, I remember when I was very, very briefly a special advisor at the Home Office under Amber Rudd. There was, I was given a briefing on modern slavery, and they said, look, what happens is you have the people, you'll know this as a former immigration minister, they're on the steps to the plane, and they say, oh yeah, I was trafficked as a modern slave, and whether they're telling the truth or not, this starts a huge, long and lengthy process of working out whether they were trafficked as a modern slave or not. And these tricks have been used for years. And Shabna Mahmood to have, as the Home Secretary said, this is outrageous, we need to stop this. They're extracting the Michael, and they're doing, they're making a mockery of the law. Well, the law's been there for a very long time. It's been there for the last 14 months under the Conservatives. It's been there for many years previously under the Conservatives as well. So they knew this was one of the ways that people would try to get out of this, and so it has proved. And those planes that have taken off for France, understandably, because of this loophole, it's not quite a loophole, but certainly the law that it stands, it is there, and it's going to continue to be used until you change the law, arguably until you withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. This just isn't going to be solved, is it?
Well, it's probably worth saying, actually, modern slavery rules aren't directly linked to the ECHR. They're actually domestic law. But I think overall, you've got to take a view. Are you going to take a radical approach that actually people coming up with last-minute claims and all sorts of things, having arrived from France, a modern, safe democracy, where if you needed to claim safety or asylum, you could have done it there. Are you going to entertain any claims? We don't, for example, entertain claims from EU citizens for asylum for obvious reasons. It would have been absolute nonsense if we did. So are they prepared to do that? And I think that is going to require effectively a bill that looks to slash through all this bureaucracy, to go through Parliament, that actually says, do you know what, if you're in this position, you cannot raise a whole load of last-minute claims. And also, I think, particularly when we come on some of the other cases that are floating around at the moment, we do need to have a debate about what is the correct balance between protecting our own country, protecting our own people, and enforcing our border laws up against sometimes decades-old treaties that were written in a completely different era, with a vision to the idea of what had happened during the Second World War and just before it in Nazi Germany. You actually see countries where people have claimed asylum from, and they're heading back for a holiday.
Yeah,
no one who fled Nazi Germany would have headed back for a holiday.
Absolutely correct, Kevin. Thank you. That's Kevin Foster, their former immigration minister, joining us there. We can see Air Force One taxiing around the runway at Stansted Airport as well. It has the Trumps on board. They're going to be heading back to Washington very, very shortly. It's just at that point where the jumbo jet is about to take off. I think it's turning round to the runway. I think Stansted, no, it's Gatwick actually. Gatwick is the biggest single runway airport in Europe. I think Stansted not too far behind, of course, as well. A pretty big and significant airport, and has hosted a number of presidents. Biden came to Stansted as well previously when he was here in the UK. I think we're starting now in terms of the taking off. We'll keep an eye on that and keep you up to date with it. Brad in Cambridge says it really made me cringe when Starmer awkwardly reached out to touch Trump's shoulder twice within the first 5 minutes. So unnatural. Monica in Sheffield says Starmer should have said we are a Christian country and the king is the head, but we are welcome to other faiths as well. Alison in Billericay says Kimmel didn't just tell a barefaced lie, which during a capital murder trial is surely a problem. He also said categorically that the MAGA movement was milking the death of their friend, a husband and father with young babies, for political gain. Let's put it in more perspective. Alison, very happy to do that. And thank you to Betty, who says, just like Net Zero was attempting to give a failing Prime Minister a legacy, recognising Gaza is Starmer's. Both will have a long-lasting consequence. We will see from history, Starmer and all of those virtue-signalling politicians will have decades of blood and civil war on their hands. Theirs can be no state without decades of underground supervision and management. The USA and UK were supposed to have learned this the hard way, says Betty, and certainly there are lots of views coming into this station about that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Well, as Air Force One is on the runway, about to take off, we're going to take a break and we will be back in just a second with the sport from the Sun. Stay with us.
Gordon Brown came to power in the late 1990s, and he said, you know, we're going to balance the books across the economic cycle. We might borrow during the bad times, but we'll repay debt during the good times. He stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Air Force One is in the sky. The Trumps are on their way to Washington. We have covered the visit in great depth. We'll continue to do so between now and 7, but now it is time for the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, Mike Anstead is with us from the Sun Sport Desk. He's the head of content there. Mike, great to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, Peter. How are you?
Big night. Very well, thanks. Big night for Newcastle in the Champions League. Tell us about this.
Yeah, two big games tonight. So starting off, Newcastle-Barcelona. So this is a rerun of their great game in 1997, which Newcastle fans will not forget, when Tino Asprilla, their great Colombian maverick up front, scored a hat-trick. They were hoping for more of the same tonight. But this also sees Marcus Rashford back in town, so obviously bombed out by Manchester United eventually. Did okay at Aston Villa last season, but now he's trying his luck at Barcelona, so we'll see how he gets on.
Tell us about Kevin De Bruyne facing his old club as well.
Yep, so Kevin De Bruyne, legend at Manchester City, 10 seasons there. Arguably, is he their greatest player of all time? Potentially. He's certainly a contender. So he only left 4 months ago. By the quirk of the Champions League draw, he's back tonight with Napoli, and well, if he scores, it might be an awkward celebration. So.
Tell us as well about what's been going on between Chelsea and the PFA over the treatment of Raheem Sterling.
Yeah, so Sterling's part of the infamous bomb squad at Chelsea. These are the players that basically the manager or the owners decide we don't want them anymore, and they're made to basically train separately, they eat separately, they even have to use their own toilet. Obviously, most of them have been sold during the summer, but both Sterling and another defender, Axel Disasi, are still there. There's now talks about their treatment and how they're being looked after, and we have to see where we're going with this. But the PFA are in talks with Chelsea to make sure they are being looked after properly. The fact that the players have been made to train completely outside of first team time. Raheem Sterling the other night posted a picture at 8:30 at night, claiming that he's training in the cold. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that and where Chelsea and the PFA stand legally over it.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that, of course, and I'm sure you'll get full coverage in the Sun of that. The special one back at Benfica?
Absolutely. He's not been away for too long. So Jose Mourinho bombed out by Fenerbahce last month. He's back in Portugal, his homeland. He's not managed there for 25 years. He's back with Benfica. Very subtle, Jose Mourinho, as you know. So he turned up today in his 250 grand Ferrari.
As you do.
That was brought for him by Roman Abramovich, the former Chelsea owner, back in 2015 as a thank you present for all his time at Chelsea. Look, it's going to be fun and games. He's back at Chelsea in the Champions League in a couple of weeks. So with Jose, it's never not going to be interesting, put it that way.
Thank you. Much like a conversation with you, Mike. That was Mike Anstad there, who's the head of content at the Sun for their sport. Plenty in the paper tomorrow as well, and online at thesun.co.uk/sport. Thank you to Lisa, who's been in touch and says, as usual, when a Conservative comes onto your show and starts preaching what should be done regarding illegal immigration, I want to start throwing objects at the TV. But to have a Conservative immigration minister come on and preach what should be done takes the biscuit, says Lisa. Well, thank you for that. Angela says, Scotland's a basket case. I detest cancel culture. However, until the left get a taste of their own medicine, they will continue using it against everyone they disagree with. And Kat in Lincolnshire says, how embarrassing is Starmer sent one illegal back on a plane today to be swapped for one in return plus family? How can you stand there and say that you think he has any credibility? Keep up the good work, talk. Cardi P is my fave, says Kat, as well as Mike Graham. Apparently, I'm happy to be on the same winner's pedestal as Mike Graham, it must be said. A great man. He'll be back tomorrow morning, of course, with Morning Glory between 6 and 10. Lots to discuss in the 6 o'clock hour of the programme. We'll be talking to Philip Reeker, the former US ambassador to the UK. Jake Wallace Simons as well. He is going to be telling us about the fact that the government is going to be recognising a Palestinian state. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defence relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk. It's just gone 6 o'clock. You're with Talk Drive and Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Loads to discuss, especially as the Trumps are now on the air. They're heading back to Washington. The big press conference earlier Starmer basically got through it without too much of an embarrassment, although he was asked about Britain being a Christian country. He seemed to slightly dodge that question. Trump gave Starmer a few lessons on immigration as well, but was very diplomatic when it came to talking about the Israel-Palestine issue, on which the two men disagree. Lots to discuss on all of that. I want your views too. 0344 499 1000. We'll get as many calls, texts, tweets, voice notes, telepathy messages, smoke signals, however you want to contribute to the show. You're more than welcome to do so. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a text message via WhatsApp. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note as well, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss. Let's get your views on the air here on Talk. Well, it's really interesting. We're talking about Jimmy Kimmel and the whole controversy about Jimmy Kimmel, the late-night talk show host. Lots of people saying that he was spreading lies. And one thing that is so incredibly important is to get things right. Doesn't matter what the piece of fact is. It's got to be right. I said I thought, I wasn't sure, but I thought that Marine 1 and Marine 2 were Chinooks. They are not. Phil has been in touch on Twitter to say the aircraft that is Marine 1 is not a Chinook. A Chinook is a much larger helicopter with twin rotors. And George says, just say Marine 1, not a Chinook. It's possibly a Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King. Chinooks have twin rotary blades. I'm going to set the top team behind the glass a very important task. Alicia is in the chair today, and we know that Ryan has taken a day off to get his knee seen till, as we say in Northern Ireland. So Alicia, it is your task to find out what kind of aircraft exactly is Marine 1. Do you accept the challenge? She accepts it. She accepts the challenge. We will find out before 7 o'clock. We think it's a Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King. I know we have a lot of military people who watch and listen to this programme, and if you have expertise on this, drop me a text 87222 with the word talk in your message. Thank you to George for his thoughts. We'll get absolute clarity on that and make sure we get the facts right. Now then, Philip Reeker is a former US ambassador to the UK. How does he think the trip has gone? Philip, what do you make of not just the press conference, but the whole trip? Will the Trumps and indeed the Starmers and the diplomatic community in and around them be looking back on this, saying it was a success? What do you think?
Well, Peter, first of all, it's great to be with you, and I do think it was a success. We've seen now Wheels Up, which is a big moment for anyone involved in these visits. There's a lot of planning that goes into this, and I think everything went extremely well. You had the state visit, historic. President Trump obviously relishing the idea that he was the first president, in fact, that he was the first president to be given a second state visit. And as he put it, he hopes he's the only one. That was a good play for him. I think he was very pleased with the pageantry, with the pomp. This was something he wanted in a period where he is looking not only for legacy, but also a bit of a dynastic look at his presidency. You saw the members of his family joining, of course, the royal family in that, his son-in-law escorting the Princess of Wales into the dinner there at Windsor. So this was a great moment. And I think everything went extremely well on the government side as well. He is, of course, our head of state and head of government. You have a king as your head of state and the prime minister as head of government. They had an extremely cordial and obviously genuinely friendly meeting, a press conference without some of the, shall we say, drama that we can see sometimes, and even a pat on the back. Clearly, I think something that was enjoyed by both, and some real solid deliverables, not only in terms of the relationship and security, the heritage of the special relationship, but also economically, and talk about investment and economic security.
Let's hope that comes to fruition. Certainly we need that growth in our country, which is currently at 0%. One other head of state who was certainly loomed large in the room despite not being there was Vladimir Putin. Let's just have a look back at the strong words that President Trump said about President Putin.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. But that turned out to be, I thought it might be among the easiest of the group.
Donald Trump there talking about the Russian relationship. Philip, in your many years of diplomatic experience, those words from President Trump about President Putin, perhaps not his strongest words that he's ever said, but certainly they'll be heard very loudly in Moscow, won't they?
I think that's true. I mean, he said it quite plainly. He's very disappointed. He sees Putin as having let him down. This is a president who believes very strongly in these personal relationships. It's part of the art of the deal. He's all about deals. He's about transactions, and Putin has let him down. Putin's done nothing. He got a very warm red carpet welcome into the United States in Alaska, and since then has only intensified his attacks on Kyiv, not giving any significant indication that he's ready for a ceasefire or serious peace talks. And I think that was evident in the president's remarks. Obviously, he and the prime minister spoke about this. They said privately it was one of the topics they touched on. I think we may hear some more, perhaps about some increased sanctions. Certainly, the president is focusing on those countries that continue to purchase oil from Putin, from Russia, allowing this war machine to continue to operate.
One major problem between the United Kingdom and the United States, not between the two men necessarily, but certainly the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States was something that was controversial at the time. It's more recently become incredibly controversial. He was sacked. And we know that that was a big issue, not just of his judgment in regard to his continued contact with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, but in regard to the Prime Minister's judgment, what he knew when. That's the 3-hour debate in Parliament earlier in the week. There's going to be even more scrutiny. The Foreign Affairs Select Committee is going to talk about that. I found it really interesting how, from this side of the Atlantic, there has been a very, very positive, until a few weeks ago, thought about how close Mandelson was to the Trump administration. But this is what President Trump said today about Peter Mandelson. Let's just play this clip about President Trump talking about Peter Mandelson, the now sacked US ambassador. This was a big controversy.
Lord Mandelson, he is no longer the ambassador. Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that. That was a choice that he made, and I don't know. What is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, it's very straightforward. Some information came to light last week which wasn't available when he was appointed, and I made a decision about it.
Well, I just find that quite interesting that President Trump, who had met Mandelson on a number of occasions, distanced himself from that. Is that a diplomatic tool as well, Philip? Were you surprised that he did that?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, this touches a little close to home to President Trump, who has also been caught up in the Epstein story. He did seem to distance himself much earlier when he broke with Epstein. There are a number of different accounts of what happened in their, at one time, very close relationship. With Mandelson, look, I think the Prime Minister probably had it right. They appointed him as a non-career ambassador, and I have to say, in Washington, he was known to indeed have established very quickly a very good and productive relationship, not only with President Trump, but with his team. An ambassador doesn't spend a lot of time directly with the president, but they not only worked on this visit very early on, they had the Prime Minister's visit to the Oval Office, which turned out to be a big success, partially because he brought and handed over at the first second the invitation from King Charles for the president to make this historic.
So with all you're saying there, Philip, is it then credible for President Trump to say he doesn't really know Mandelson? Is that a credible thing?
Well, I think how well he knows him, I couldn't comment on. I mean, obviously, he's met him. He knew him. I think he was perhaps also saying he didn't know the circumstances of this. It was more appropriate for the Prime Minister to speak about the United Kingdom's ambassador to Washington. What I can say is that the UK embassy in Washington has an excellent deputy head of mission who has moved up to James Roscoe, who's become now the chargé d'affaires, the acting ambassador since Mandelson's dismissal. And he is a terrific career ambassador, served in the royal household at one time, at the United Nations, a whole series of very important things, and he stepped in quickly to ensure that all the hard work that went into this visit could just continue smoothly, and I think we saw that in the last 2 days.
Okay, Philip, as always, thank you. That's Philip Rieger there, who is the former interim US ambassador to the UK. Alicia has, of course, as always, done her job. She's a great producer. Marine One, most commonly, is the VH3D Sea King, or less frequently is the newer VH92A Patriot, and smaller VH60N White Hawk. I don't know what any of that means, but I know it's correct because she's told me. Let's go to a couple of calls here. Tristan is in Bolton, and he has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Oh, sorry, Philip knows about Marine One. Sorry, Philip, I should have asked you. That would have been a very straightforward thing to do. That was rather stupid of me. You tell me about Marine One. You've probably been on it.
Well, I have not been on Marine One. I've been on Air Force One, but Marine One is simply a designation given to whatever helicopter the president is riding in. So indeed, it is often a Chinook. We've seen Chinooks land at Winfield House when I was resident there. The UK Chinooks landed there, but often they'll use a different helicopter, particularly when the president is traveling, depending where he's going. And so a Sikorsky may indeed have been the president's helicopter on this case. So Marine One is whatever helicopter he's in. Air Force One is, in fact, whatever airplane he's in, not always the 747 that we see so often.
Yeah, indeed. I remember at the end of the film Air Force One, the plane that collects Harrison Ford changes its call sign to Air Force One. So you as the ambassador, of course, will have seen the Chinook, coming onto the grass there, and of course the TV series, The Diplomat. Have you watched that about the US ambassador to the UK? Have you seen that? It's a very dramatic series.
I have seen that. I helped them a bit with it. Got them access to our embassy. Terrific group of actors and producers and writers. Great show. It is fictional, of course, and the Winfield House you see in the show is not the
no,
it's
not the same one. I've been to Winfield House, and it must have been amazing to live there. I remember actually I was at a talk that John Podesta gave at one point, the former chief of staff to Bill Clinton. There were a number of American PhD students there who asked lots of really boring questions about, Mr. Podesta, it's progressivism at risk and all this kind of stuff. And I just put up my hand and said, Mr. Podesta, how much like the West Wing is it? And that was the question everybody wanted to know. So perhaps The Diplomat is your West Wing. Great to talk to you, Philip, and thank you for that extra information on Marine One. Very, very helpful. We will now go to Tristan in Bolton, who's waiting very patiently. Tristan, what did you think of the visit? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was watching the press conference earlier and listening to Starmer and what he had to say. What an absolute load of rubbish. I mean, the president's looking at him and ought to say, why are you talking like these people are stupid? Reference the freedom of speech. He's going on about the freedom of speech and this, that and other. He's a strong advocate of it. And Trump's just looking at him as ought to say, you're talking rubbish.
Yeah.
You're talking absolute rubbish. And then he's going on about the wind farms, saying about renewable energy and everything like that. And again, Trump tapped him on the back and then went on about wind energy and how it's.
Well, he said it was all. He said it was all a load of rubbish. So do you think Trump is more credible than Starmer then?
Yeah, I mean,
even when he says he doesn't really know Peter Mandelson.
Well, I mean, there is that. Yeah, he must know more than what he let on. But I mean, like you just said to the previous callers, it's more for Starmer to answer that question than it is Trump, because he was the UK's diplomat in America.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm ex-military, and out of the two, I would rather follow Trump into a war than Starmer. I'd rather follow a rat into the sewers than Starmer anywhere, to be honest. I'm a proud Englishman, proud British person. You put me and I'll bleed red, white and blue.
But you clearly just don't think Starmer is the right man to run this country.
Honestly, no. He makes me very cross when I listen to him. You can't get a straight answer out of him. You listen to him on PM's questions. He body swerves every question. Every question.
Tristan, thanks so much. Thanks for your thoughts. That's Tristan and Bolton there. Thanks also to Susan, who's messaged and said, I get so angry listening to Starmer about the so-called plan. The only country it benefits is France. See how many come over from France on Saturday, now designated as approved migrants by France, no less. What other country in the world allows another country to tell them who they should accept as approved migrants? These people will bring in their families, jump to the top of the housing list and get all their bills paid. It's total and utter madness. France will rip us off. We're so stupid, says Susan. I know Darren in Suffolk has some thoughts about this as well. Let's speak to Darren. Hello, Darren.
Hi, Peter. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. What would you like to say today? Hope you're well too.
Yeah, good. None of this makes any sense to me. I mean, they've been going on for months about how they sent 35,000 people back, and it's taken them best part of a week to send one person back.
Yeah.
And in the end, it ends up being an Indian, and an Indian was one of the top 3 countries we had returns rights to over the past year. So why didn't we just send them back to India direct?
Well, exactly, because we don't have a returns agreement with them, I suppose, is the short answer to that. But, I mean, if you look at it, they're saying one in, one out. Actually, since this has been announced, we've had 5,500 migrants. They've tried to have flights over the last few days. They've put one person back to France, and it's someone who won't even stay in France. So the net gain for France isn't even 1, it's 0, because they're going to deport that person to India.
I know. Look, if Donald Trump, and also there's a flight coming across on Saturday. I wonder how many are on that from France. But what Donald Trump said about using the military, I'm ex-military as well. What they should do is, we haven't got a deterrent. So, for instance, if you had the Navy in the sea saying, "You're not coming in, guys, turn around. You're not coming in." Yeah. Okay, the first boat, it might be a bit dangerous, but they turn around, go back to France and say, "We can't get in, guys. Don't try that anymore because they're not there." The deterrent has worked. The deterrent about taking away all the incentives would work. The deterrent about saying, we will send you somewhere else will work.
Well, you're right. You're right, Darren. You need a deterrent, and there isn't a deterrent currently. Now, they would say, I asked Starmer about this on a couple of occasions. I've interviewed him a couple of occasions, and he said smashing the gangs is the deterrent. Now, show me the migrant who is on the beaches of Calais who says, well, they're going to smash the gangs, and that means I won't go to the UK. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, but I mean, if you had a deterrent to say from the 1st of November, anyone that comes across on a boat won't be able to stay here, then all of a sudden they think, well, got to go across before the 1st of November because we won't be able to stay. What I'm saying, you've got to have a deterrent of some sort, and we haven't got any.
Yeah.
We've got incentives.
Completely correct, Darren. Thank you for that. That's Darren in Suffolk there. Ed in Nottingham says, my mother was a Holocaust survivor who lost her entire family, and he came to this country because she married my father, who was British. I'm glad in many ways she's no longer here to see what the country has become, effectively already a proxy Muslim state which supports terrorists. Starmer and this Labour government are all traitors, says Ed in Nottingham. Traitors is a word I hear a lot more these days, it must be said. We're going to talk to Jake Wallace Simons in a minute or two. He's the author of Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred, and what to do about it. He's got a new book coming out as well. I'm going to speak to him extensively about that near the time of publication. But for the meantime, I want to talk to him about this Israel-Palestine issue. The fact that we now in the UK, in the next few days, are going to be recognising a state of Palestine. Does that matter? Is it something that we really should worry about? Or is it actually just giving succour to Hamas terrorists? Is it something that Keir Starmer should do? Is it about peace in the Middle East? Or is it actually about his own party management problems, the backbenchers who are the tail that's wagging the dog? What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Get your call in and we can talk about it in just a few minutes' time.
summit in Alaska that Trump had with Putin looks not to achieve very much. Putin seems not to have been deflected an inch from his course. So Starmer will be talking to Trump about whether he thinks there is actually any chance of Putin agreeing to a ceasefire and some sort of negotiation on a peace deal. And I guess Trump may be saying, well, what do you think about secondary tariffs on China and India? And I don't know, but you guys will find out in the media soon enough quite what position the British are going to take on that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've just been checking my tweets there over the break. Neil says on the Jimmy Kimmel scandal, man loses job for being a bit of a knob, the end. Apparently I am allowed to say a bit of a knob on air, so thank you for that, Ofcom. Andy says, I've met him a few times but I don't really know him, I think is what Trump meant. In regard to Peter Mandelson, it makes sense to me. Another person says, on the issue of free speech, Starmer said he supported free speech, but also the protection of children from paedophiles as part of the Online Safety Act. His government is not protecting young girls from grooming gangs. What a complete liar and gaslighter in chief. And another person says, I've just tuned in and I'm expecting lots of interesting discussion. Well, I hope you're going to get it. We're going to talk to Jake Wallace Simons in just a second, because he is the person who is giving us his thoughts on all of this. This is, of course, the recognition of the Palestinian state at the General Assembly, the UN General Assembly next week. This is almost certainly going to happen. Keir Starmer previously said there had to be a lot of different conditions that were reached. That doesn't now appear to be the case. It came up, of course, during the press conference between Starmer and Trump, and we know that this is a point of contention between the two men. They talked about it in their one-on-one for over an hour, not just that issue but other issues as well. Let's see what happened at the press conference a bit earlier on this afternoon.
Why is the UK's position on a Palestinian state, in your view, wrong?
We discussed this amongst other things. We had the best part of an hour, I think, upstairs earlier today, just one-to-one, going through a number of affairs, world affairs, in private. And we absolutely agree on the need for peace and a roadmap, because the situation in Gaza is intolerable. The hostages have been held for a very, very long time, and they must be freed. And we need aid to get into Gaza at speed. The question of recognition needs to be seen, and so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have.
I want the hostages released now, right now, not 1, 2, we'll give you 3 more tomorrow, and, like it's been, but we're the ones that got all the hostages released. We got many came to the Oval Office, and I've heard stories like I've never thought even possible.
Donald Trump speaking there about the hostages. We know that 48 of them are still in Gaza. Jake Wallace Simons is with me now. Jake, what do you make of what President Trump said versus what Keir Starmer said? It seemed to be they were being quite diplomatic about this, but it is a major point of contention in regard to the recognition of a Palestinian state.
Well, the difference is that President Trump wants Israel to win this war, and Keir Starmer wants Israel to lose this war. It couldn't be clearer than that. Keir Starmer, in moving to recognise a state of Palestine, has been interfering in the war, I'm afraid, on the side of Hamas, because the negotiations that were taking place recently, the American ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, revealed recently that Hamas pulled out of those negotiations because it saw Britain and the European powers lining up to pledge they would recognise the state of Palestine. And so Hamas thought, well, look, we've got all this support. Why are we bothering to release any hostages? Let's end the negotiations. So Keir Starmer is interfering in that way. And not only that, but once Keir Starmer announced that he was going to recognise a Palestinian state, he got immediate congratulations from Hamas. Now, Hamas, let's not forget, kidnapped British citizens on October the 7th, most famously Emily Damari, that Spurs fan. Kidnapped British citizens, killed British citizens on October the 7th and subsequently, and are now congratulating the British Prime Minister on his foreign policy, which Hamas perceives favours them. Now, if Hamas thinks that British foreign policy is favouring its cause of jihad, then I, frankly, believe them. And Keir Starmer should hang his head in shame.
It's interesting, Jake, and I know you'll be covering a lot of this in your new book, Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews on Itself, that is out very soon. I just wonder, if we put our cynical hat on for a second, 147 countries already recognise a Palestinian state. My question to them would be, where is it? Where's the capital? Who's the head of it? Who's the government? You know, the kind of things that are needed in a state. But let's set that aside for 1 second. 147 states recognise a Palestinian state. If another 4 do so by the end of that next week, does that really make that much of a difference?
Well, I think it actually does make a difference, because the vast majority of the countries that recognise a Palestinian state are not democracies. You know, most of the countries in the world are not democracies, and the United Nations is a collection of almost 200 countries or so, and it's always been a battle against the democracies by a large number of autocracies who have ganged together, or often under the banner of the Soviet Union in the past, to attack us. What's changed now is that democratic countries, Britain, France, and across the West, are beginning to take the side of the autocracies against our own interests, against Israel. Israel's always been attacked as a proxy for the West, as a proxy for the democratic world. And I think now we're seeing that the democratic world is siding against its own interests. So, like I said, for the jihadis, in effect, and against the interests of those British citizens who were killed and kidnapped on October the 7th.
Well, Keir Starmer was asked about Hamas at this press conference. Let's just hear what he had to say.
Let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organisation who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine. And what happened on October the 7th was the worst attack since the Holocaust. We have extended family in Israel. I understand firsthand the psychological impact that that had across Israel. So I know exactly where I stand in relation to Hamas.
I mean, those are quite strong words. He was certainly tapped on the back, sort of backslapped by Donald Trump when he said those. Don't you think that perhaps Starmer is perhaps more focused on this from the Israelis' perspective than perhaps some have portrayed him, maybe even you, Jake?
Not at all. I'm afraid that Keir Starmer speaks with forked tongue when he expresses any support for the Jews and for Israel. I've been hearing it ever since I was editor of the Jewish Chronicle a couple of years ago, when Keir Starmer was running to be the leader of Labour and running to be Prime Minister. He gives nice words to the Jewish community, but then his actions always go against the interests of Jews and Israel, and in so doing, against the interests of the West and of Britain as well. We've got to look at what he's doing. He's emboldening Hamas, he's prolonging the war, and he's acting against the interests of Israel's security. Now, that's not the behaviour of an ally. That's the behaviour of somebody who has very clearly taken a side against Israel, against Britain's Jews, and against Britain itself.
It's interesting, this week we have seen a UN committee of some rather unappealing states, it must be said, with a report produced by a man once called an anti-Semite by UNRWA in regard to the fact that they think that genocide is being committed in Israel. Someone who's repeated, in Gaza, I should say, by Israel. One person who's repeated this will come as absolutely no surprise that Sir Sadiq Khan, Knight of the Realm and Mayor of London, has done that. What's your reaction to that, Jake?
Well, I mean, the idea that Israel's been committing a genocide is not new. It was invented by Soviet propagandists during the Cold War, was spread through the UN and around the world, particularly on the left, and has now been given the stamp of approval by the UN in a report which is, frankly, a dodgy dossier. It's a hoax. The idea that Israel's committing a genocide is a hoax. The Gazan population remains at around 2 million. Israel could have wiped out most of that in an afternoon if it had used its military might to its full extent. If you look at the UN report, it's very clear what it's done. Essentially, it barely mentions Hamas. If you take any normal war and you take two sets of combatants and remove one set of combatants, then it looks like a genocide. And that's what the UN has effectively done. Doesn't mention the hostages, doesn't mention Hamas, behaves as if Israel started the war, doesn't mention the tunnels, doesn't mention Hamas's strategy of human sacrifice. So the UN, shame on the UN for doing so, for turning itself into a propaganda mechanism on behalf of Hamas. And shame, frankly, on the Mayor of London, who should know better. He should know his own party, the Labour Party in government, has rejected very wisely the allegations of genocide. I don't know how long it's going to continue to reject those for, but at the moment it's holding firm, just about. But Sadiq Khan has gone out on a limb because he wants popularity. He wants, you know, unfortunately, if you're somebody on the left these days, the best way to get cheers is to raise the Palestinian flag. And that is shameful because the Palestinian flag, I'm not saying that their cause is illegitimate, but increasingly it's become a proxy for jihadism, a proxy for Hamas in these great culture wars. So we've got to wake up in the West and realise that you can only continue to support other people's jihadis for so long before they come for you as well. And surely they're coming for us.
Jake, thank you for your thoughts there. Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself by Jake Wallace Simons. That book is out in a few weeks' time. Jake's a great author, academic, and someone who knows these things back to front. So thank you to him. What do you think of what he said there? 0344 499 1000. Charlie's been in touch and says the recognition of a Palestinian state is Labour putting party before country to retain the Muslim bloc vote, just like the proposed Islamophobia laws and the covering up of rape gangs. Grant says he's in Croydon. He says under an international maritime law, if a vote is unsafe, a boat is unsafe, it's got too many people in it, it should be taken straight to the nearest shore, which will be France. And on the migrant side of things, Darren has been in touch with a voice note.
Great show as ever. I'm celebrating tonight. Got the champagne and ice. One person out the door. Woohoo! What a deterrent. So we've got 50,000 plus that have come in. We've got one finally gone out. We've still got 50,000 come in that we don't want, even though one's gone out, one got in. And we've then got the dependents of that one person coming in. Plus, we've got a new deal with India that allows them to come in. We've got a new deal with students, haven't we, with the EU that allows them to come in. We've got a new deal with people from Gaza coming in. We've got Afghanistan's coming in. Wow, let's just open everything.
Darren, I don't know about you, any other viewers and listeners, but I detected a hint of sarcasm in there. Someone who makes a sarcastic remark and the person who doesn't get it, you know what the gulf between them is called? It's called the sarcasm. Anne says he has to protect the Muslim vote, seeing it's only them and the Islington Wukarati he has left. And Stephen in Belfast says, hey Peter, great show as always, really enjoying your chat. Thank you, Stephen. Trump flies home with his royal tea towel, and when he gets to Washington he says, do we really trust that Starmer? His advisors go, no, trust him. No one knows what he stands for. Oh well, at least I got my tea towel, says Stephen in Belfast. Stephen, I know you have been recovering from illness as well. I just wish you well for that. Stephen's a regular contributor. Karen in Bournemouth has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Karen, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hi, Peter. Just thinking, going back to when Trump first became president.
Yeah.
And the way he dealt with Putin was, you know, we're all pally-pally and everything else, trying to wean him off China. I'm wondering if he's doing the same thing, because we've been very much drifting towards China with Starmer. You know, he can't get anybody there quick enough. And I'm wondering if that's why he's being extra diplomatic at the moment.
It's a very interesting point, and it's one that it's always hard to keep all these people on side and to know what's right. What do you think should be done in this, Karen?
I think that he should carry on like he is at the moment. Starmer, the sooner we get rid of him, the better.
Okay.
Completely. You know, I'm sorry, he's got so many faces, he makes Big Ben look like a one-sided clock.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. That's Karen in Bournemouth there. Just before the break, let's play another voice note. This is from Ashley.
What I want to know, with the guy that was deported this morning on the plane at 6:15, when he gets back to France, how is it that they're able to deport this guy back to India, but we can't deport the guy back to India? What's stopping us just deporting these people from their point of origin? I know that sometimes we don't know where it is that they've come from, but if France can deport him back to India, then why could we not just send him back and not accept the other person from France? It doesn't make any sense.
Ashley, that's a really, really good point. And had I heard your voicemail, your voice note, I just say earlier, I would have put it to the former immigration ministers was a really, really interesting point. Let's see if we can get an answer for tomorrow's show. Actually, I'm sure we'll talk to someone on this deal tomorrow, and if the production team behind the screen would just remind me, we can maybe even play that again tomorrow, actually, because it was a really interesting point. I haven't got an answer to it myself, but I'd certainly like to find out. And this is what's great about this programme and the station. You know, people send in their thoughts, their ideas, and then it inspires other people to have thoughts and ideas about things, including me, and I really, really appreciate everybody who is in touch. We're going to take more of your calls between now and 7. We're also going to speak to one of the editors from The Sun in terms of what's coming up in their paper tomorrow. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Jane, who has been in touch on text. She says the Prime Minister has to face the people at his own party conference, and then he has to deliver his promises. It is no good fixing the world when his own citizens are struggling. And lots of chat as well about Marine One. Apparently it is not a single type of helicopter, but rather the call sign for any United States Marine Corps aircraft carrying the President of the United States. The most commonly used aircraft for this purpose, says Johnny in Carlisle, is the Sikorsky VH-92 Patriot and the VH-60N White Hawk, with the older VH-3D Sea King being phased out. All of the helicopters are operated by the Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, HMX-1. Well, we've learned an awful lot about what Marine 1 is today, and thank you for it. We also heard from someone who's been on Air Force 1 as well. This huge and very important state visit, the second state visit, is of course going to be a major element of The Sun tomorrow. The assistant news editor, Tom Seward, is with us now. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
Big, very well, thanks. Very big week for all of us, of course, as journalists. How are you going to be covering it tomorrow?
Huge. I mean, it's the story of the day, isn't it? Trump's comments on using the military to potentially stop the boats. That is for us the main story.
Of course, yeah.
In tomorrow's paper, particularly because it was our political editor Jack Elsom who sort of asked the question that really sort of brought this out.
Yeah, got a good answer out of them as well. We talked to Jack earlier in the programme as well, and so many.
Kept on getting interrupted, didn't he, by Marine One? Did you call it a Chinook?
Well, I think it was me actually. We weren't quite sure, but we're sure now. Yeah, I've done actually a couple of interviews with Jack over the past few days. One of which was at the Reform UK conference, and this very, very loud public address system came on during the interview, and then it was the Marine One that drowned him out. He couldn't even hear me at all. But listen, stop using troops to stop the boats. Also Putin as well. There's a big element of that. He went quite far on Putin.
He did, absolutely. I think the focus for us and for some readers generally is still bill on migrants. And, you know, we've seen the one in, one out policy, which is exercising a lot of people today. In fact, we've got a reporter down at the High Court as we speak covering that latest attempt to try and prevent a migrant from being put on a plane tomorrow. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think, you know, the message from Sun readers is just, look, Keir, you need to get a handle on this.
It's not one in, one out, is it? When you have 5,500 people, since it was announced previously, and then you know, we send one person to France, but actually they're going to go to India.
Well, exactly, and it just doesn't really seem fair at all. I think, I know you used the word farce earlier. It does strike all of us as pretty farcical, particularly when we had a reporter on one of those Air France flights earlier in the week that was meant to have a few migrants on it, and you know, it's empty seats.
Plenty of empty
had lots
seats,
of those passengers using those seats because they got a bit more legroom. So that's a big story for us into tomorrow's paper. And then, you know, will be wall-to-wall coverage of
course, and Kate and Melania as well, the Princess of Wales and the First Lady out with the Scouts in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Lovely photos there.
Lovely photos. I don't know if you were ever in the Scouts, Peter.
I wasn't. I was in the Boys Brigade.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what it would be like to get one of your badges from Melania, but I think it would be pretty extraordinary.
I think it would be quite a good thing to
vaguely remember doing the Cubs, but lovely kind of pictures from there.
They seem to be enjoying themselves, and the Princess of Wales doing brilliantly. Just away from the visit, we know that there are many other stories in the paper tomorrow. Tell us about music healing the heart.
Well, I think this is an absolutely beautiful story, and I'll test you on what you think the Sun's headline is going to be. This is a wonderful story from our health correspondent Sam Blanchard. It's about these academics in Mexico who played music to heart patients on an intensive care ward, and what they found was that when they played music very softly to some of these patients, they tended to get better, their hearts healed more quickly than the ones that didn't have the music played to them. What we don't know, and like the killer question, is what were the songs that they played. I don't know what it was. You know, last night a DJ saved my life, maybe something like that. Staying Alive, that'd be a good one, wouldn't it? What do you think the Sun's headline is?
One of those two, I would imagine. No? Something else?
I mean, we might need to wait until tomorrow for the headline. But
tantalising.
As I understand it, it might be songs from the heart, but that could change.
I like it.
Change. Who knows?
Very good.
That's a lovely story. The one thing I would say for your viewers, you just need to play the music very, very softly. Apparently, it was the same volume as Rustling Leaves.
Oh right, okay. So it's almost subconscious.
Yeah. Don't blast it out when you ghetto blast it.
I'm very interested in another story you have here about Del Boy's bar from Only Fields and Horses. You're far too young to remember Only Fields and Horses. It's up for a cushy £600, so you don't even have to be a millionaire this year or next year to afford it. Tell us about this.
Precisely. You know, it's one of the cocktail bars from that popular TV series.
It's not the one he fell through.
It's not the one in the pub where you know, he's ogling a lady from the other side of the pub, and then the bar goes up.
So everyone remembers the bar going up and Del Boy falling through it. I think it's in the same episode where there's this brilliant bit. They're trying to impress these women, and Del Boy and Rodney are there, and Rodney's not really listening. Previously they've said, we're airline pilots, you know, we're just in, you know, just resting and having a few drinks here, and these women, oh gosh, that's very impressive. He goes, actually no, we're not, we're professional tennis players. And Rodney's not really listening, and one of the women says, what about you, Rodney? What do you prefer, AstroTurf or grass? At which point Rodney says, I don't know, I've never smoked AstroTurf. Which is it's one of the great lines. It's a brilliant series, but you can get a part of it for yourself for £600.
That's the starting price up for auction. So it starts at 600, but it might go significantly higher than this. And it's a prop that was used in the TV series. So as I understand it, the auction is next month, and if your viewers want a slice of that cocktail bar, they just need to go along.
Great stuff.
But they'll be betting against, or they'll be going against us, I suspect, on the news desk.
Yes, exactly.
A slice of it.
A slice of the action, a slice of lemon and lime. I actually, believe it or not, these auctions are all over the place, and a friend of mine, I mean, the viewers and listeners to this programme know by now that I'm a total politics nerd, and we know from a previous life, Tom, how much of a politics nerd I am, and you are as well. And actually, a friend of mine got me a 40th birthday present last year, which was a lovely biography, but it was clearly second-hand, and it had a sort of like a coffee mug stain on it. I sort of thought, what's going on here? And it turned out it was from the estate of Betty Boothroyd. So they bought this like really quite good political biography that belonged to Betty Boothroyd. It's from her library, and you could actually just like buy these books from her estate.
So tell me, have you sold it on.
No, of course not. No, it's a treasured possession. My friends Harry and Gabby got it for me. They used to work here, actually. It was very, very kind. Tom, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to the news desk. That's Tom Seward there. He's the assistant news editor of The Sun. Thank you also to Ian, who says, regarding the president not knowing Peter Mandelson, it could have been the Georgian brush-off when an aristo did something beyond the pale. His colleagues would say they didn't know him. It was like sending someone to Coventry. It didn't mean that he didn't know him. Thank you to another person who says, Putin will be letting the West down until he dies. Trump needs to suck it up, but maybe he thinks that would mean war. And John says, as I see it, Trump as a setup, a get-out-of-jail card to do absolutely nothing to Putin by stating that the West needs to stop buying Russian oil, which will, of course, not happen. Plenty more of your opinions and your calls and your voice notes coming your way in just a second here on Talk. Stay with us.
know from endless examples that women are often persuaded, cajoled into staying in abusive, physically, sexually abusive relationships by these courts. We know that they lose the custody of their children when the children reach a certain age. We know that they're not given the same financial standing and rights to inheritance. It really is an absolute regime that has no place in this country of ours.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, Jake was brilliant as always. Jake Wallace Simons there we heard earlier on. Love his honesty. Can't hold back anymore. Starmer has to be called out. The Prime Minister's lips move, but his actions do the opposite. Andy says NATO need to come together and agree to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. Israel must have no military presence in the region as an agreement. We will find Hamas. Israel will get protection from Hamas, and in return Israel works on intel only. End it once and for all. Andy, that would be a radical solution. I don't think NATO is going to want to get involved because Israel is not a NATO country. A NATO country hasn't been attacked here, and I think they'd be very reluctant to do so, but it's certainly an idea I actually haven't heard before, so that's going to ruminate. I'll have a think about that properly a bit later on. Another person says, Peter, the most disturbing part of the whole press conference was Starmer's inability to state categorically that we are a Christian country. What a message and a signal to have sent out to the world, clearly a signal that other religions will have noted. I think you're right on that, and I know quite a number of our viewers and listeners take their religion very, very seriously. Lots of Christians and people of other religions, Jews and many, many other religions as well, who listen to this station. But certainly, you know, the UK is a Christian culture and country predominantly, and that's what he should have said, I think, even though I'm totally agnostic, it must be said. Well, I used to be agnostic, now I'm not so sure. Dominic in Kirby in Ashfield says, can someone please explain to me what Starmer gets his pen and papers out for, to make out he is writing something down when he gets asked a question he doesn't want to answer? He looked like Scrappy-Doo standing at the side of the great man. Let me at him! Let me at him! Right then, Dave has been in touch on the migrant return. He sent a voice note. This is what Dave has said.
I reckon Donald knows what the score is, though. We send one over to France and we get one back. And the one we sent over to France, they're not even going to keep because they're going to send him straight to India. So we're out of kilter straight away. It's embarrassing, mate, and I don't think he come across well. I listened to it, mate, and I can't wait to see his face squirming when I get home. Dave, thank you. Chris has been in touch with the voice note as well.
One thing I don't understand is how can France deport this Indian gentleman and no, there's no problems? Where are their lefty lawyers? What's going on? This doesn't seem right to me. Very, very good point as well. How do they know necessarily that Indian is going to go, that man who's been sent back to France, that he is definitely going to go quietly and without legal redress? Well, Philip is in South Wales. He's given me a shout about Trump's state visit. Philip, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hello there. Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Yeah, excellent show as usual.
Thank you.
But can you tell me, this Trump's banquet and the King's banquet there, how much did this cost the country?
Well, we're told it's 15 million quid, but we're also told that there's billions of investment coming. I'll believe the billions in investment when I see it, to be honest, Philip.
That's what I mean. So how did this be the British people, how did it better off the British people? Which way?
Well, they're saying that there's going to be this investment. They're saying that there are trade links. Do you think it's all a waste of time? Do you think we just shouldn't have bothered, Philip?
Absolutely. You know, they're spending all this money. The country's in a terrible state, and they're spending all this money on this banquet. What a waste of money.
Philip, thanks for your thoughts. That's Philip in South Wales there. Kevin O'Sullivan's with me. He's here on the other side of the 7 o'clock news. Waste of money? Kevin, what do you think?
I don't think it is. I mean, the old hippie in me comes out when I see all these dignitaries last night, 160 of them, sitting down to this fabulous feast, you know, drinking £1,000 bottles of wine and so on. So, you know, something slightly sticks in my craw about that, but it is important. You know, we have very successfully ingratiated ourselves to President Trump, and that can only be good for the country. So, yeah, I get it. I get it when people say, "Oh."
He was very quick to distance himself from Mandelson, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that guy.
Well,
it's
listen,
like, well,
I mean,
you kind of do.
Listen, you can help me out here, but I was downstairs filming, so I missed most of the press conference. I caught the beginning of it, and at that point I thought, this could be a festival of lies, because the first thing Trump said was, this guy Starmer, he's a hell of a negotiator, very tough.
Yeah, he said we did better out of the the trade deal.
Yeah, Keir Starmer is the worst negotiator in the history of politics. He's a terrible.
But that's
look at the one in, one out.
Well, you're absolutely right, but it's a classic political thing to say, oh, you did better out of this than we did. I mean, Trump in no way did worse out of that deal.
Yeah, what that means is that America did much better. But as you were just alluding to, I wonder exactly just how good this deal was. We've created 15,000 jobs. No one has any evidence of that. So,
and also, will they actually come to fruition? We'll see.
Yeah, but I do think it's worth it. I do think it is worth, you know, laying out the red carpet for Trump and keeping a close relationship with America. So
you'll be talking about it on your show, no doubt, Kevin.
I will do. And is it true? So, as I say, I was downstairs filming.
Yeah, sure.
You can help me on this.
Yeah.
Is it true that the press conference in Chequers proceeded and throughout they never once mentioned Jeffrey Epstein?
Right at the end. So right at the end, Beth Rigby from Sky News said, mentioned it and talked about Mandelson, and actually the two men had clearly thought about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Starmer just trotted out the lines that he had every single time previously, and Trump simply said, I don't really know him, and actually this is more a question for the Prime Minister. But in fairness to Beth Rigby, who gets a lot of criticism as political editor of Sky News, she did bring it up. She did bring it up.
Yeah, no, okay, but pretty much...
no, there's certainly lots of media did not bring it up. Jack Elsom from The Sun talked about immigration. That was a very, very big issue
enough,
there.
yeah.
And what Trump said I thought was really interesting when he said, send in the military. You know.
Yeah. So they pretty much got away with what could have been 2 days of sheer embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, every single person could have asked a question about it and got many more answers out of it.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that a little later. We're going to kick off with this extraordinary story, the Egyptian asylum seeker who the Home Office pondered for